Space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the Starship Enterprise. Her 5-year mission to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no man has gone before. But on Stardate 3891.4, the Enterprise would encounter something that challenged every principle upon which the Federation was built. A ghost from Earth's violent past, armed with a weapon that could crack worlds like eggs. The bridge of the USS Enterprise hummed with its usual efficient chaos. Captain James T. Kirk sat in his command chair, one leg casually crossed over the other, watching the main view screen display the serene blue-green curve of Earth. They were 3 days out from a long-overdue shore leave at Starbase 11 when Lieutenant Uhura's hand flew to her earpiece. "Captain, I'm picking up something. Unusual." Her melodious voice carried an edge of confusion. "It's a distress signal, but the frequency is antiquated. Pre-Federation era." Kirk straightened immediately. "Origin? Bearing 127 Mark V, distance 2.3 million kilometers, near the Oort cloud boundary." Uhura's fingers danced across her console. "Sir, the signal is automated. It's been repeating for... My God, it's been transmitting for over 200 years." Spock swiveled from his science station, one eyebrow climbing toward his Vulcan hairline. "Fascinating. No vessel of that era possessed the power systems necessary to maintain a transmission for such a duration. Sulu, set an intercept course, warp factor 3. Kirk leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. Something about this felt wrong. Ships didn't just drift for 2 centuries transmitting distress calls, so they were found, salvaged, or their power cores died. "Spock, scan for life signs." The Vulcan's slender fingers moved across his instruments with practiced precision. "Sensors detect a massive metallic object, Captain. Configuration unlike any vessel in our databases." A pause, and Spock's voice dropped half an octave. "Energy readings are extraordinary. The power signature suggests an active antimatter reactor, but the design principles are completely foreign." "Life signs?" Kirk pressed. "Inconclusive. There appears to be some form of interference emanating from the vessel itself. Electromagnetic shielding of a type I've never encountered." Dr. McCoy had wandered onto the bridge, coffee in hand, just in time to hear the exchange. "Jim, oh, you're not seriously thinking of approaching an unknown vessel that's been dark for 200 years? That's how horror stories start." "That's also how we find answers, Bones." Kirk flashed his navigator a grin. "Sulu, time to intercept?" 14 minutes at current speed, sir." Those 14 minutes stretched like hours. The bridge crew worked in tense silence as the Enterprise closed the distance. When the object finally appeared on the view screen, the entire bridge fell silent. It was enormous, easily twice the length of the Enterprise, perhaps more. The ship's design was utterly alien to Federation aesthetics, all sharp angles and aggressive lines. The hull was a deep blue-gray, scarred and pitted from what looked like centuries of micrometeorite impacts. At the bow, a massive cannon assembly protruded like the barrel of some ancient artillery piece, dwarfing anything in Starfleet's arsenal. The vessel's superstructure rose in terraced levels, reminiscent of ocean-going warships from Earth's 20th century. "My God," Sulu breathed. "It looks like... It can't be." Spock's fingers flew across his console. "Comparison analysis complete, Captain. The vessel's configuration bears a 94.7% structural similarity to the Imperial Japanese Navy's Yamato-class battleships. Specifically, the battleship Yamato itself, which was sunk in 1945 during Earth's Second World War." "That's impossible," McCoy said flatly. "The Yamato was a surface vessel. It couldn't survive in space, let alone generate the kind of power readings you're detecting. Nonetheless, Doctor, the evidence is irrefutable." Spock straightened, his hands clasped behind his back. "However, there are significant modifications. The hull appears to have been reinforced with an unknown alloy. The main battery has been replaced with what appears to be a single, massive directed energy weapon, and there are multiple propulsion nacelles integrated into the aft superstructure." Kirk stood slowly, moving toward the view screen. The ship hung against the stars like a monument to a darker age of human history. An age of total war, of battleships and aircraft carriers, of conflicts that consumed entire continents. But someone had taken that relic and transformed it into something else, something that belonged among the stars. Uhura, hail them, all frequencies. Aye, sir, a moment passed. No response, Captain. But the distress signal is stronger now. It's... Wait. Her eyes widened. Sir, I'm getting a response. It's automated, but it's changing. The ship is waking up. On the view screen, lights began flickering to life across the massive vessel's hull. Running lights traced the ship's skeletal outline, and the bridge tower blazed with sudden illumination. Deep within the ship's superstructure, something rumbled to life. A thrumming bass note that the Enterprise's sensors picked up as a massive power surge. "Shields up!" Kirk snapped. "Red alert!" The klaxon wailed as the Enterprise's defensive screens snapped into place. Spock's console erupted in a cascade of data. "Captain, the vessel's main weapon is charging. Energy levels are rising exponentially. If current progression continues, the weapon will reach firing capacity in 47 seconds. Evasive maneuvers. Sulu, I get us out of their firing arc." The Enterprise banked hard to port, her impulse engines flaring. But before Sulu could complete the maneuver, every screen on the bridge flared white. When the visual feeds restored, the Yamato hung exactly where it had been. But now every weapon port along its hull had opened like the eyes of some great beast awakening from slumber. And then, impossibly, a voice crackled over the comm system. It spoke in Japanese, the universal translator struggling to keep pace. "Unidentified vessel. This is the United Nations Cosmo Navy battleship Yamato. Stand down and identify yourselves, or we will open fire." Kirk and Spock exchanged glances. The United Nations? That organization had been defunct for over a century, replaced by the United Earth Government and eventually the Federation. "This is Captain James T. in Kirk of the Federation Starship Enterprise. We received your distress signal and came to render assistance. We mean you no harm." A long pause. Then, "Federation? What Federation? Where are we? What year is this?" McCoy stepped closer to Kirk's chair. "Jim, they don't know. They've been asleep for 200 years and they don't know." Kirk's mind raced. First contact protocols were designed for meeting alien species, not time-displaced humans armed with weapons that could apparently threaten his ship. But one principle remained constant: honesty. "Yamato, you are in the Sol system, approximately 2.3 million kilometers from Earth. The star date is 3891.4. In your calendar, that would be the year 2267. Another pause, longer this time. When the voice returned, it carried the weight of dawning horror. 2267? That's over 200 years. The Earth. Did we fail? Did the Earth survive? Kirk looked at the massive warship on his screen, a vessel that had somehow crossed centuries, carrying warriors who had left everything behind to save a world that might no longer exist. In that moment, he made a decision that would echo across the quadrant. "Earth survived," Kirk said quietly, "and yes, you succeeded. Whatever your mission was, humanity is still here. We've reached the stars. We've built a federation of planets dedicated to peace and exploration. Your sacrifice, whatever it was not in vain." If you want to see more epic crossover stories, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character and the universe you'd want to see them in down in the comments below. The stars hold infinite possibilities, and the silence that followed was deafening. Then, slowly, the Yamato's weapons powered down. The massive main cannon went dark, and a new voice came over the comm, older, carrying the unmistakable authority of command. "Enterprise, this is Captain Juzo Okita of the battleship Yamato. Request permission to come aboard your vessel. I believe we have much to discuss." Kirk smiled. "Permission granted, Captain. Welcome to the 23rd century." The transporter room of the USS Enterprise had seen its share of unusual arrivals. Alien dignitaries, rescued colonists, even the occasional spatial anomaly given humanoid form. But when the Yamato's away team materialized on the pad, even Chief Kyle found himself staring. There were three of them. The center figure was clearly the commanding officer, a man who appeared to be in his 60s, and though he carried himself with rigid military bearing. His uniform was unlike anything in Starfleet's records, a deep blue tunic with gold trim, brass buttons running down the front, and insignia that marked him as a captain in an organization that no longer existed. His face was weathered, carved with lines that spoke of impossible decisions made under fire. But his eyes, those were what caught Kirk's attention. They held a clarity and resolve that transcended time itself. To his left stood a younger man, perhaps in his early 30s, with sharp features and an analytical gaze that immediately reminded Kirk of Spock. He wore a similar uniform but with different insignia, and carried what appeared to be a data tablet of some kind, its technology antiquated yet functional. The third figure was the youngest, or a woman who couldn't have been more than 25. Her uniform was crisp, her posture parade ground perfect, but there was something in her eyes, a haunted quality that suggested she'd seen things no one her age should witness. Captain Okita stepped off the transporter pad and rendered a formal salute, his right hand rising crisply to his brow. Captain Kirk, I am Captain Juzo Okita, commanding officer of the battleship Yamato. This is my tactical officer, Lieutenant Commander Shiro Sanada, and Lieutenant Yuki Mori, our communications and radar specialist. Kirk returned the salute, then extended his hand. Welcome aboard the Enterprise, Captain. This is my first officer, Commander Spock, and my chief medical officer, Dr. Leonard McCoy. Okita's handshake was firm, his palm calloused in a way that suggested he'd started his career on vessels where manual work was still required. Commander, Doctor. He paused, taking in the transporter room with a sweep of his eyes. Remarkable. Matter-energy conversion with perfect molecular reconstruction. We theorized such technology was possible, but we never achieved it. Your vessel suggests you achieved a great many things we'd consider impossible, Spock observed. A space-capable reconstruction of a 20th-century battleship, powered by what appears to be a controlled antimatter reaction, armed with directed energy weapons of extraordinary magnitude. The engineering principles alone, Mr. Spock, Kirk interrupted gently. Perhaps we should continue this conversation in the briefing room. I suspect our guests have questions of their own. Okita inclined his head. Indeed we do, Captain. Beginning with the most pressing. You said Earth survived. But you did not say what it survived. The walk to the briefing room was conducted in tense silence. Yuki Mori's head swiveled constantly, taking in the Enterprise's corridors with barely concealed wonder. Sanada maintained his analytical composure, but Kirk noticed the way his eyes tracked every technical detail. The control panels, the comm units, the smooth curves of the bulkheads that spoke of construction methods far beyond anything the Yamato's crew would recognize. Once seated around the briefing room table, Kirk ordered coffee from the food synthesizer. The looks of astonishment on his guests' faces when the beverages materialized were almost worth the tension of the moment. Synthesized food, McCoy explained. Molecular restructuring based on stored patterns. It's not quite as good as the real thing, but it's hot and it's coffee. Okita took a sip, his expression unreadable. Then he set the cup down with careful precision and met Kirk's gaze. Captain, I believe it's time we shared our respective stories. I will begin, as ours is chronologically first. He paused, gathering himself. What do your records say about the year 2199? Kirk glanced at Spock, who responded immediately. 2199 was during Earth's post-atomic recovery period. The Eastern Coalition and Western Alliance were in the final stages of reunification under the United Earth government. Space colonization was in its infancy. Mars and the Moon were established, but little else. Historical records from that era are fragmented due to the electromagnetic pulse damage from the eugenics wars and World War III. Then you have no record of the Gamilas, Okita said quietly. Gamilas? Spock's eyebrow climbed. I am unfamiliar with that term. Okita's jaw tightened. In 2192, Earth was attacked. Not by other humans, but by an alien empire, the Gamilas. They came without warning, without negotiation. For 7 years, they bombarded our world with planet bombs, Radioactive missiles that poisoned the surface, boiled the oceans, turned our blue planet into a dying red wasteland. The Enterprise officers sat in stunned silence. McCoy was the first to speak. That's, that's impossible. There's no record of any alien contact before the Vulcans in 2063. Not impossible, Doctor, Spock said slowly. Improbable, but not impossible. If the Gamila's empire existed in a distant region of the galaxy and subsequently collapsed or withdrew, there would be no evidence of their presence in our current era. And if Earth's surface was indeed rendered uninhabitable, the surviving population would have been forced underground. The fragmented records we have from that period could easily have omitted or lost details of an alien invasion. Sanada leaned forward. We did go underground. The entire population. What was left of it? 11 cities deep beneath the surface, living on whatever we could scavenge and grow in hydroponic farms. We had perhaps 1 year left before the radiation killed us all. Then something changed, Okita continued. We received a message. A capsule arrived on Mars containing plans, technological schematics for a faster-than-light drive system, and coordinates. A world called Iskandar, 148,000 light-years from Earth, where a device existed that could cleanse our planet of radiation. Kirk felt his pulse quicken. 148,000 light-years? That's halfway across the galaxy. Even at our maximum warp speeds, such a journey would take decades, Spock finished. Perhaps longer. We didn't have decades, Yukimori said, her voice quiet but firm. We had 1 year, so the United Nations Cosmo Navy did the only thing we could. We took the wreckage of the battleship Yamato, the original, sunk in 1945, and we rebuilt it. Not as a ship of the sea, but as a ship of space. We installed the wave motion engine based on the Iskandar plans. We armed it with the most powerful weapons we could devise, and we sent it across the galaxy to save our world. And you succeeded, Kirk said. You reached Iskandar. You obtained the device. Okita nodded slowly. We did. The Cosmo Cleaner D, they called it. A device that could reverse radioactive contamination on a planetary scale. We fought our way there and back, through Gamila's fleets and spatial anomalies and terrors I still see in my dreams. We lost good people. So many good people. But we made it back to Earth. I activated the device myself, Mori added, her eyes distant. I watched from orbit as the blue returned to our world, the oceans restored, the clouds forming. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. And then, McCoy prompted gently. Sanada's expression darkened. And then the Gamila's leader, Abelt Dessler, you returned. He'd survived our final battle, and he came to Earth with one last gambit, to use a dimensional weapon that would have collapsed Earth into a quantum singularity. We engaged him in orbit. The battle lasted 3 hours. In the end, we destroyed his flagship, but the dimensional weapon detonated. The wave motion engine saved us, Okita said. Sanada realized we could use it to create a spatial distortion field, to ride the dimensional collapse rather than be consumed by it. But the calculations were rushed, performed under fire. We didn't know where, or when, we would emerge. Understanding dawned on Kirk's face. You were thrown forward in time, over 200 years. It would appear so. Okita looked at each of the Enterprise officers in turn. Captain Kirk, you said Earth survived and humanity reached the stars. But I need to know. Did our sacrifice matter? Did the Earth we saved endure? Or did it fall to some other catastrophe? Kirk stood, moving to the briefing room's view screen. With a few commands, he brought up an image of Earth as it appeared now. A jewel of blue and white hanging in the void, vibrant and alive. Captain Okita, your Earth survived. More than that, it thrived. The United Earth government grew stronger. In 2161, we joined with Vulcan, Andoria, and Teller to form the United Federation of Planets, an alliance of worlds dedicated to peace, exploration, and mutual defense. Today, the Federation comprises over 150 member worlds across thousands of light years. Yuki Mori's hand flew to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Sanada's analytical composure cracked, revealing raw emotion beneath. Even Okita's iron control wavered, his eyes glistening as he stared at the living world his crew had given everything to save. Then it wasn't for nothing, Okita whispered. Everything we endured, everyone we lost, it mattered. It mattered more than you know, Spock said, and there was something almost gentle in the Vulcan's tone. If Earth had fallen in 2099, there would have been no recovery, no united Earth, no federation. The timeline we now inhabit exists because of your actions. McCoy cleared his throat roughly. Captain, I think your crew deserves to see this. All of them. Okita nodded, composing himself. Agreed. Lieutenant Mori, contact the Yamato. Inform the crew that Earth lives and thrives, and that their mission was not in vain. As Mori moved to the briefing room's communications panel, Kirk turned back to Okita. Captain, we have a great deal to discuss. Your vessel is a tactical mystery, and I mean that as a compliment. Your wave motion engine, your main weapon, your shielding technology, none of it matches our current understanding of physics. I'd like to propose that our engineering teams work together to understand your systems, and to ensure that we don't accidentally destroy something when we power up, Sonata added with a wry smile. Our technology was built in desperation, Captain Kirk. We made it work, but elegant it was not. My chief engineer, Montgomery Scott, will be delighted to meet you, Kirk assured him. Fair warning. Once he starts talking about matter-antimatter intermix ratios, it's nearly impossible to get him to stop. He sounds like my kind of engineer, Sonata replied. Spock had been studying his tricorder throughout the exchange. Now he looked up, his expression troubled. Captain Okita, there is one detail that concerns me. Your vessel's main weapon, the wave motion gun, I believe you call it. My scans suggest it operates on principles similar to our own antimatter warheads, but on an exponentially larger scale. Can you confirm its destructive capability? The mood in the room shifted instantly. Okita's face became a mask once more, the weight of command settling back over him. Commander Spock, the wave motion gun is capable of destroying a planet. It channels the wave motion engine's tachyon energy into a focused beam. We've used it to vaporize entire fleets, to tunnel through planetoids, to breach dimensional barriers. It is, in essence, the most powerful weapon ever created by human hands. Kirk felt his stomach tighten. A planet-killer weapon. The Federation had protocols for such things, strict protocols. General Order 24 allowed for a starship captain to destroy all life on a planet to prevent a greater catastrophe, but the authorization required near impossible conditions to meet. And here sat a vessel with a crew of 100-some souls who could make that decision on their own. I see, Spock said carefully. Then I must ask, Captain, under what circumstances would you deploy such a weapon? Okita met the Vulcan's gaze without flinching. When there was no other choice, when the survival of Earth or innocent lives hung in the balance, the wave motion gun is not a weapon of first resort, Commander. It is a weapon of last resort. We fired it precisely 14 times during our mission to Iskandar and back. Each time, the decision cost me sleep for days afterward. That's 14 times more than Starfleet has deployed planet-level weaponry in the past decade, McCoy observed quietly. We fought a war for survival, Doctor, Sonata said, his voice edged with steel. The Gamilas showed no mercy, took no prisoners, accepted no surrender. They wanted our world dead and our species extinct. We fought with what we had, and what we had was the Yamato and its gun. No one's questioning your courage or your necessity, Kirk said quickly, sensing the rising tension. But you need to understand. You're no longer in a war for survival. You're in Federation space, an era of peace and exploration. The presence of a weapon like yours, it complicates things. Are you saying you want us to disarm? Okita asked, his tone neutral but his eyes sharp. I'm saying we need to figure out where you fit in this new timeline, Kirk replied honestly. And that's going to take time, trust, and cooperation from all of us. A long moment of silence stretched across the briefing room. Then Okita nodded slowly. Understood, Captain. We are warriors displaced in time, armed with weapons from a darker age. But we are also explorers who cross the galaxy to save our world. Perhaps there is common ground between the Yamato and the Enterprise after all. Kirk smiled. I think you'll find, Captain, that there's more common ground than you might expect. Now let's get our engineering teams together and figure out exactly what we're dealing with. And then the ship-wide alert klaxon screamed to life, cutting Kirk off mid-sentence. Uhura's voice crackled over the intercom, tight with tension. Bridge to Captain Kirk. We have multiple contacts decloaking off the port bow. Klingon battlecruisers, sir. 4 of them. They're hailing us and demanding we surrender the Yamato immediately. Kirk and Okita locked eyes across the table. The 23rd century was about to teach the Yamato's crew its first hard lesson. In this era, some things never changed. War was still very much a possibility, and the Klingon Empire had just noticed a new weapon in the game. Kirk was moving before Uhura finished her sentence, Okita and his officers close behind. The turbolift ride to the bridge took 15 seconds. 15 seconds during which Kirk's mind raced through tactical possibilities and diplomatic gambits. The Klingons weren't known for their patience, and 4 battlecruisers meant they were serious. The turbolift doors hissed open onto controlled chaos. Sulu's hands flew across the helm controls while Chekhov armed the Enterprise's weapon systems. On the main view screen, 4 D-7-class Klingon battlecruisers hung in space like birds of prey, their hulls painted in aggressive greens and grays, their forward disruptor arrays already glowing with barely restrained power. "Status," Kirk snapped, dropping into his command chair. 4 Klingon vessels, Captain, Sulu reported. The lead ship is the IKS Kuldun, flagship of Commander Koloth. They're maintaining position at 15,000 kilometers, weapons armed but not locked. Yet, Chekhov added grimly. Kirk glanced back at Okita, who stood with Sanada and Mori near the science station, taking in the bridge with the calm assessment of a veteran commander. "Captain, I'd recommend you and your officers stay out of visual range. If the Klingons see you, they'll know we're coordinating." "Understood." Okita moved to stand beside Spock's station, his eyes never leaving the view screen. "Uhura, open a channel." "Channel open, sir." The view screen flickered, replacing the image of the Klingon ships with the face of their commander. Koloth was everything Kirk expected from a Klingon officer, broad-shouldered, dark-skinned, with a neatly trimmed goatee and eyes that glittered with predatory intelligence. Unlike some of the more bombastic Klingon commanders Kirk had faced, Koloth carried himself with the confidence of someone who didn't need to shout to be threatening. "Captain Kirk," Koloth's voice was smooth, almost cordial. "How fortuitous to encounter the famous Enterprise so far from your usual patrol routes." "Commander Koloth, to what do I owe the pleasure of 4 battlecruisers at my doorstep?" "Come now, Captain. You know perfectly well why we're here." Koloth leaned forward slightly. "That vessel behind you, the primitive warship with the impossible power signature. Our long-range sensors detected its awakening from halfway across the sector. We've been monitoring it for 3 days, waiting for someone to spring the trap." "Trap?" Kirk kept his face neutral, but his mind was working furiously. 3 days. The Klingons had been watching the Yamato for 3 days while it drifted dormant. They'd waited to see who would investigate. "I'm afraid I don't follow." "Of course you don't." Koloth's smile was cold. "Let me illuminate you then. 2 days ago, our sensors detected a subspace message transmitted from that vessel, a signal on frequencies that haven't been used in over 2 centuries. The message was encrypted with codes from Earth's old United Nations Cosmo Navy. Codes that, according to our intelligence, should not exist because the organization they belong to never developed space capability." Spock's eyebrow climbed. "Fascinating. You've been monitoring Earth's military communications that far back?" "We monitor everything, Commander." Koloth shifted his attention to the Vulcan. "When our analysts decrypted the message, like they found something remarkable. Technical specifications for a faster-than-light drive system based on principles unknown to Federation science. Weapons schematics for directed energy projection capable of planet-level destruction. And most intriguing of all, references to something called the wave motion gun." Kirk felt Okita stiffen beside Spock's station. On the view screen, Koloth continued. "Now, you can imagine our interest in such a weapon. A single ship capable of destroying planets would shift the balance of power in this quadrant considerably. So we waited. And as predicted, the Federation couldn't resist investigating." Koloth's smile widened. Now here's what's going to happen, Kirk. You're going to stand down and allow us to board that vessel. We'll take it back to Konos for study. In exchange, we won't destroy the Enterprise. That's very generous of you, Kirk said dryly. There's just one problem with your plan. Oh? And what might that be? That vessel is crewed. It's not a derelict, Commander. It's a United Earth ship with a full complement, and they're under my protection. Koloth's expression shifted slightly. Surprise, quickly masked. Crewed? Impossible. That vessel has been dormant for over 200 years, yes, but it was in stasis, not destroyed. The crew is alive, conscious, and has rights under Federation law. Rights I intend to protect. The Klingon commander's eyes narrowed. You're bluffing. No one could survive 2 centuries in stasis with technology that primitive. Perhaps you'd like to ask them yourself. Kirk glanced at Okita, who nodded fractionally. Captain Okita, if you'd step into view. The Yamato's commander moved to stand beside Kirk's chair, his posture ramrod straight, his expression unreadable. On the view screen, Koloth leaned back slightly, reassessing. I am Captain Juzo Okita of the United Nations Cosmo Navy Battleship Yamato, Okita said, his voice carrying the weight of command across the void. My crew and I have traveled through both space and time to save our world. We have no quarrel with the Klingon Empire, but neither will we surrender our vessel to anyone. Bold words from a man 2 centuries out of date, Koloth observed. Tell me, Captain Okita, does your ancient vessel even have shields? Can it maneuver in 3 dimensions, or are you still thinking in terms of surface naval tactics? Our vessel is perfectly capable of defending itself, Sonata interjected, or unable to remain silent. And I'd be happy to demonstrate if necessary. Kirk shot Sonata a warning look. The last thing they needed was to escalate this into actual combat. Commander Koloth, let's be reasonable. You have 4 battlecruisers. I have the Enterprise. Captain Okita has the Yamato. If we fight, people die. Is that really worth it for a ship you're not even sure you can operate? Oh, we can operate it, Koloth assured him. Klingon engineers are quite skilled at reverse engineering primitive technology. Besides, we don't need to understand it to use it. We just need to point it at our enemies and fire. That weapon is not a tool for conquest, Okita said, his voice hardening. It was built to save lives, not take them. How noble. Koloth's sarcasm was palpable. But nobility doesn't determine who controls the battlefield, Captain. Power does. And your vessel represents more power than anything short of a Federation starbase. I will have it. Over my dead body, Kirk said quietly. That can be arranged. Koloth's hand moved toward his command console. You have 30 seconds to stand down, Kirk. After that, we open fire. The bridge fell silent. Kirk could feel the tension radiating from his crew, Sulu's hands hovering over the helm, Chekhov's finger near the weapons control, Uhura listening to the subspace channels for any sign of Klingon tactical coordination. Spock stood motionless at his science station, but his eyes were calculating trajectories and odds. Captain Kirk, Okita said softly, for Kirk's ears only. You've shown us great kindness, and I won't allow you to die protecting a ship from another era. Give me 5 minutes. Let me return to the Yamato and get my crew to battle stations. Then withdraw the Enterprise to a safe distance. Absolutely not, Kirk replied in the same low tone. You're outgunned 4-1. Those battlecruisers would tear you apart. Perhaps. But you said yourself that if we fight, people die. Better it be warriors who chose this life than innocents caught in the crossfire. Okita's eyes met Kirk's. Besides, you haven't seen the Yamato fight. 20 seconds, Kirk, Koloth called out. Kirk's mind raced. The Klingons wanted the Yamato intact for study. That gave them an advantage. Koloth wouldn't use his heaviest weapons if he could avoid it. But that same logic meant the Yamato and Enterprise were fair game. The 4 battlecruisers could overwhelm the Enterprise's shields in minutes. Unless... Mr. Spock, Kirk said, still maintaining eye contact with Okita. In your analysis of the Yamato's power systems, did you detect any defensive capabilities? Indeed, Captain. The vessel appears to possess a form of energy shielding, though based on principles different from our deflector technology. The exact capabilities are unknown, but the power allocation suggests significant defensive potential. 10 seconds, Koloth warned. An idea crystallized in Kirk's mind. Risky, possibly insane. But then again, those were his specialty. Captain Okita, how quickly can your crew bring the Yamato to full battle readiness? From cold start? 3 minutes to bring the wave motion engine online. Another 2 to charge the main weapon. 5 minutes total. Yeah, and your shields? Instantaneous, Captain. The energy barrier is tied directly to the wave motion core. As soon as the engine activates, we're protected. Kirk smiled. That dangerous smile that made McCoy nervous, and enemies reconsider their life choices. Mr. Sulu, prepare to drop shields on my mark. Captain Okita, you and your officers are about to become the fastest transport job Chief Kyle has ever performed. Spock, the moment they're clear, I want full analysis of the Klingon formation. Look for weak points. Time's up, Kirk, Koloth announced. I gave you a chance to… Computer, Kirk interrupted, raising his voice. Activate General Order 104. Authorization, Kirk, James T., Captain, USS Enterprise, Service Number SC937-0176-CEC. On the view screen, Koloth froze. On General Order 104 was rarely invoked. It authorized a Starfleet captain to extend full Federation protection to vessels and crews that demonstrated extraordinary merit in the defense of Federation principles, even if those vessels weren't officially part of Starfleet. Captain Kirk, Spock said quietly, invoking General Order 104 places the Enterprise and the Yamato under unified command for the duration of the crisis. I'm aware of that, Mr. Spock. Kirk kept his eyes on Koloth. Commander, as of this moment, the battleship Yamato and her crew are under my direct protection as a provisional auxiliary vessel of the United Federation of Planets. Any attack on that ship is an attack on the Federation itself. Are we clear? Koloth's expression shifted through several emotions: surprise, anger, grudging respect, and finally cold calculation. You're taking a significant risk, Kirk. Your Starfleet command won't be pleased that you've granted Federation protection to a vessel armed with planet-killer weapons. I'll deal with Starfleet. You deal with this. Stand down or face the consequences of attacking Federation assets. The consequences? Koloth leaned forward. Kirk, I have 4 battlecruisers. You have 1 starship and a museum piece. The mathematics are not in your favor. Mathematics aren't everything, Commander. You taught me that at the Battle of Caleb IV. Kirk stood, moving closer to the view screen. You know what I'm capable of when backed into a corner. You know I don't bluff. So I'm going to ask you once more, politely. Withdraw from this sector and we'll pretend this conversation never happened. For a long moment, Koloth said nothing, and then his smile returned, sharper than before. You've grown teeth since Caleb IV, Kirk. I approve. But you're still assuming I want the Yamato intact. What if I'm willing to destroy it to prevent you from having it? Then you learn nothing from its wreckage, Spock observed. Antimatter detonation at that power scale would leave no usable debris. Your mission would be a complete failure. Koloth's jaw tightened. Point taken, Commander. But there's still the matter of pride. The Empire doesn't back down from Federation vessels, even famous ones. He paused, then added almost casually. Of course, if this were to become a proper challenge, say ship to ship, the Yamato versus one of my cruisers, honor would be satisfied regardless of outcome. Kirk caught the lifeline Koloth was throwing. The Klingon commander didn't want an all-out battle any more than Kirk did. He wanted a demonstration, proof that the Yamato was worth the risk, or proof that it wasn't. One ship, Kirk said. The Yamato versus one of your cruisers. If the Yamato wins, you withdraw. If your cruiser wins, the Yamato surrenders to you voluntarily. Jim, no, McCoy started, but Kirk held up a hand. Okita stepped forward. Captain Kirk, this is my decision to make, not yours. You're right, Kirk acknowledged. It is. But I'm the one who just made you part of the Federation. Your fight is my fight now. He turned back to Koloth. Do we have an agreement? The Klingon commander studied Kirk for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Agreed. The IKS Karg will be your opponent. Commander Kaz is young, eager to prove himself. He'll give you a proper fight. Koloth's smile turned predatory. 1 hour, Kirk. 1 hour to prepare your ancient warship. Then we'll see if legends from the past can stand against the Empire's finest. The screen went dark. Immediately, the bridge erupted in controlled chaos. Captain, with all respect, have you lost your mind? McCoy demanded. You just committed that ship to a fight against a Klingon battlecruiser. Better one cruiser than four, Kirk countered. He turned to Okita. Captain, I apologize for speaking for your ship, but no apology necessary, Okita interrupted. You gave us exactly what we needed, time and a fighting chance. I accept your terms. He glanced at Sanada and Mori. We should return to the Yamato immediately and prepare. Agreed. Uhura, have Chief Kyle standing by for transport. Kirk grabbed Okita's shoulder as the older captain turned to leave. Captain, good luck. Okita's stern features softened slightly. We crossed 148,000 light-years and fought our way through an Empire's entire fleet, Captain Kirk. One Klingon cruiser doesn't concern me. He paused, then added, but I appreciate the sentiment. As the Yamato officers headed for the turbo lift, Kirk turned to his science officer. Spock, I need everything you can give me on that D7 class cruiser. Weaknesses, tactical patterns, anything. I shall compile the data immediately, Captain. Spock hesitated, then added, Captain, the Yamato's main weapon, if they deploy it against the Klingon vessel. I know, Spock. A planet-killer weapon used in combat within Federation space. It'll cause an incident that'll make the Organians look tame. Kirk sank back into his command chair. We'll have to trust that Captain Okita knows what he's doing. That's a lot of trust to place in a man from 200 years ago, McCoy muttered. Kirk watched the view screen where the Yamato hung in space, its running lights beginning to glow brighter as systems came online. Bones, that man led a crew across half the galaxy to save Earth from extinction. He's earned a little trust. On the view screen, the Yamato's massive form began to shift, its bow swinging to face the Klingon formation. Deep within its hull, the wave motion engine was awakening, tachyon particles beginning their cascade toward ignition. And on the bridge of the legendary battleship, see Captain Juzo Okita sat in his command chair and prepared to show the 23rd century exactly what a ship from Earth's darkest hour could do. The hour of reckoning was about to begin. The Yamato's bridge was a study in controlled urgency. Unlike the sleek, curved surfaces of the Enterprise, the Yamato's command center was angular and functional, banks of analog gauges interspersed with holographic displays, manual controls alongside voice-activated systems, a design philosophy born from desperate innovation rather than elegant engineering. Captain Okita settled into his command chair, a worn leather seat that had carried him across impossible distances. Around him, his crew moved with practiced efficiency, their hands flying across controls that looked primitive compared to Federation technology, but had been forged in the crucible of survival. Status report, Okita commanded. Lieutenant Commander Sanada stood at the tactical station, his fingers dancing across glowing panels. Wave motion engine coming online. Current output at 30% and climbing. Estimate full power in 90 seconds. Defensive systems. Energy barrier standing by. Once the wave motion core reaches 40%, I can activate full shields. Sanada glanced at a secondary display. The Klingon vessel is moving into position, designating as Target Alpha. On the main view screen, one of the Klingon battlecruisers had broken formation, the IKS Karg, smaller than its flagship companion but no less menacing. Its hull was scarred from previous battles, and its forward disruptor arrays glowed with barely restrained energy. Lieutenant Mori, open a channel to the Enterprise, Okita ordered. Yuki Mori's hands moved across her communications console. Channel open, Captain. Enterprise, this is Yamato Actual. We are at battle stations and preparing to engage. Request you maintain position at safe distance. Kirk's voice crackled over the comm. Understood, Yamato. We'll be standing by, and Captain, give them hell. A ghost of a smile crossed Okita's weathered features. We intend to. Yamato out. He turned to his helmsman, a young ensign named Nanbu, who had been barely 20 when they'd left Earth. Mr. Nanbu, Bring us about. Heading 270 Mark 15. Close to combat range, but keep us outside their optimal firing arc. Aye, sir. Coming about. The Yamato's thrusters fired, and the massive battleship began its ponderous turn. It moved nothing like the Enterprise. No graceful banking or smooth acceleration. The Yamato turned like what it was. A repurposed ocean battleship, its movements deliberate and powerful, but lacking the fluid agility of purpose-built spacecraft. On the bridge of the IKS Karg, Commander Kaz watched the ancient vessel maneuver with a mixture of amusement and disdain. He was young for a Klingon ship commander, barely 30 cycles, but he'd earned his position through aggression and tactical cunning. This would be his chance to prove himself worthy of a heavier command. Sensor analysis, Kaz barked. His science officer, a grizzled veteran named Torak, studied his instruments. The vessel is massive, Commander. Nearly twice our displacement. Our hull composition is primitive, iron alloy with reinforcement plating of unknown composition. But the power signature? Torak's eyes widened. By Kalos, the power signature is extraordinary. It's reading higher than a Constitution-class starship's warp core. Weapons? Multiple energy projectors along the hull, likely directed energy weapons, and something else. There's a massive emitter array at the bow. It's drawing power from the main reactor, but the purpose is unclear. Kaz leaned forward in his command chair. No matter. Primitive weapons against Klingon shields. They might as well be throwing rocks. He raised his voice. Helm. Attack pattern Kaz 3. Close to 8,000 kilocams and open fire. Target their bridge. The Karg surged forward, its impulse engines flaring bright green. Disruptor arrays charged to full power, photon torpedo tubes armed and ready. In seconds, the Klingon battlecruiser would be in optimal firing range. On the Yamato's bridge, alarm klaxons wailed. Enemy vessel accelerating, Sonata called out. They're moving to attack range. Wave motion engine status? Okita demanded, his voice calm despite the crisis. 70% and climbing. But Captain, we need 90% to fire the main weapon. I'm not planning to fire it, Commander. Not yet. Okita's eyes never left the view screen. Energy barrier. Activate now. But sir, we're only at 70%. The barrier won't be at full strength. Do it. Sonata's hands flew across his controls. Energy barrier. Activating. Around the Yamato's hull, space itself seemed to shimmer. Tachyon particles streamed from the wave motion core, forming a field of exotic energy that wrapped around the battleship like an invisible cocoon. The effect was subtle, nowhere near as visible as Federation deflector shields, but the power readings were undeniable. On the Enterprise, Spock observed the phenomenon with fascination. Extraordinary. The energy barrier operates on principles similar to our deflector shields, but it's drawing power from their faster-than-light drive system. The efficiency is remarkable, if somewhat unorthodox. Will it protect them? Kirk asked. Unknown, Captain. The barrier is only at partial strength. A full spread of Klingon disruptors might... The Karg opened fire. Twin beams of green energy lanced across space, converging on the Yamato's bridge tower. The disruptor fire struck the energy barrier and stopped. The beams diffused across the invisible shield, and their energy absorbed and dissipated into space. The Yamato didn't even shudder. On the Karg's bridge, Commander Kaz shot to his feet. Impossible! Those shields shouldn't be that strong. Increase power and fire again. The Klingon battlecruiser unleashed a devastating barrage. Disruptors, photon torpedoes, everything in its arsenal. The space around the Yamato lit up like a star-going nova. Energy washed over the ancient battleship in waves of destruction, and the Yamato sailed through it untouched. Shields holding at 85%, Sonata reported, his voice tinged with relief. The barrier is more efficient than we calculated. The wave motion energy is reinforcing itself under fire. Remarkable, Okita murmured. Then, louder. Return fire. Main turrets, target their weapons arrays. You show them we have teeth. Along the Yamato's hull, massive turrets rotated, not the original 18-inch naval guns, but their modern equivalent. Shock cannons powered by concentrated energy pulses. They had been designed to crack Gamila's battlecruisers, vessels far more advanced than anything the Klingons fielded. Shock cannons locked on target, the weapons officer reported. Fire. The Yamato's shock cannons spoke with thunder. Brilliant blue-white pulses of energy screamed across the void, crossing the distance to the Karg in microseconds. The Klingon battlecruisers' shields flared bright green as they struggled to absorb the impact. And failed. Two of the pulses penetrated the Karg's shields, slamming into the port weapons array. Metal vaporized, systems exploded. The Klingon vessel lurched violently to starboard, eyed trailing atmosphere and debris. On the Enterprise, McCoy let out a low whistle. Good Lord, they just punched through Klingon shields like they weren't even there. The energy output of those weapons is approximately 2.7 times greater than our own phaser banks, Spock observed. And the penetration effect suggests a different operational principle, possibly a particle beam rather than a directed energy stream. Kirk leaned forward in his chair, watching the battle unfold. The Yamato was outgunned in terms of number of weapons, slower, less maneuverable. But what it lacked in quantity, it made up for in sheer devastating power. Every shot from those shock cannons hit like a hammer from the gods. On the Karg, Commander Kaz dragged himself back into his chair, blood streaming from a cut on his forehead. Our damage report. Port weapons array destroyed, Torak shouted over the alarm klaxons. Shields at 60%. We've lost 2 torpedo tubes and 3 disruptor emplacements. Impossible, Kaz snarled. They're using primitive technology. How can they? With respect, Commander, there's nothing primitive about those weapons. Torak pulled up a tactical analysis. Those energy cannons are operating at efficiency levels we've never seen. And their shields. By Kahless, their shields are actually getting stronger the more we shoot at them. Kaz's eyes narrowed. He'd underestimated this ancient vessel, assumed age meant weakness. A mistake he wouldn't make again. Helm. Evasive pattern Kaz 7. Get us out of their firing arc. Tactical. Concentrate all remaining weapons on a single point on their shields. We find a weak spot and exploit it. The Karg banked hard, its impulse engines flaring as it executed a tight spiral away from the Yamato's firing solution. Klingon disruptors fired in concentrated bursts, hammering at a single point on the energy barrier. On the Yamato's bridge, warning lights flared. Shield stress building in Section 7, Sonata called out. They're concentrating fire. If they keep this up, they'll create a weak point. Mr. Nanbu, roll ship 30 degrees to port. Distribute the damage across our shields. Okita watched the Karg's maneuvers with the practiced eye of a veteran. They're fast, much faster than we are. We can't match their maneuverability, Captain, Nanbu admitted. The Yamato wasn't designed for dogfighting. No, Okita agreed. But we weren't designed to lose either. Lieutenant Mori, and can you predict their flight path? Yuki Mori's fingers flew across her radar console. I'm analyzing their patterns, sir. They're trying to get behind us, to hit our engines. Then let's give them what they want. Okita's eyes gleamed with tactical insight. Mr. Nanbu, reduce engine power to 60%. Make it look like we're struggling to turn. Sir, Nanbu glanced back, confused. Trust me, Ensign. Make them think we're vulnerable. On the Karg, Torak noticed the change immediately. Commander, the enemy vessel is slowing. Their maneuverability is degrading. Kaz smiled, a predator scenting wounded prey. They can't sustain those shields and maintain engine power. They're overextending. He pointed at the view screen. Helm, bring us around to their stern. We'll target their engine core directly. One good shot and they'll be dead in space. The Karg accelerated, swinging wide to approach the Yamato from behind. It was a standard Klingon tactic: disable the engines, leave the enemy helpless, then destroy them at leisure. Kaz had used it a dozen times before. He didn't know he was flying into a trap. Enemy vessel at our 6 o'clock, Sonata reported. Range, 12,000 meters and closing. Excellent. Okita's voice was calm, almost serene. Mr. Nanbu, the moment I give the word, full emergency reverse thrust. Sonata, prepare to fire all aft shock cannons the instant they're in range. Mori's eyes widened as she understood the plan. Captain, that's brilliant. The Karg closed to optimal firing range, its forward disruptors glowing bright green. Commander Kaz raised his hand to give the order to fire. Now, Okita commanded. The Yamato's main engines fired in full reverse, thousands of tons of ancient battleship decelerating with violent force. The effect was instantaneous. The distance between the two ships collapsed in seconds. The Karg, expecting to pursue a fleeing target, suddenly found itself almost on top of the Yamato, and the Yamato's aft shock cannons opened fire at point-blank range. The pulses of energy slammed into the Karg's forward shields with devastating force. At this range, there was no time to evade, no room to maneuver. The Klingon shields flared brilliant green, then overloaded. Two of the shock cannon pulses penetrated, striking the Karg's bow directly. The Klingon battlecruiser's forward torpedo bay exploded. The bridge shielded, but the ship lurched violently, systems failing across multiple decks. On the Karg's bridge, consoles exploded in showers of sparks. Torak was thrown from his station, unconscious before he hit the deck. Commander Kaz pulled himself upright, his face a mask of blood and fury. All weapons! Fire everything! The Karg's remaining disruptors and photon torpedoes launched in a desperate salvo, point-blank range working both ways. The energy barrier around the Yamato flared brightly, absorbing the punishment. Alarms wailed across the Yamato's bridge as shield strength dropped rapidly. "Shields at 40%!" Sonata shouted. "We can't take another hit like that." "We won't have to," Okita said calmly. "Helm, full power to forward thrust. Get us some distance. Tactical. Prepare the—" "Captain," Mori interrupted, her voice tight with alarm. "Two more Klingon vessels are breaking formation. They're moving to assist the Karg." On the Enterprise's bridge, Kirk saw it too. "Koloth is cheating. He's sending in reinforcements." "The agreement was one ship," Spock observed. "Commander Koloth appears to have decided that honor is less important than victory." Kirk's jaw tightened. "Uhura, hail Koloth. Now." The view screen flickered, showing the Klingon commander's face. Koloth's expression was carefully neutral. "Yes, Captain Kirk?" "You're breaking our agreement, Commander. Two ships are moving to engage the Yamato." "I'm doing no such thing," Koloth replied smoothly. "Those vessels are merely moving to better observation positions. If the Karg cannot handle one primitive vessel, then Commander Kaz doesn't deserve command. You and I both know that's a lie. Prove it." Koloth's smile was predatory. Or perhaps you'd like to intervene. Break your own observation protocol? Give me the excuse I need to engage the Enterprise directly? Kirk's hands clenched on his armrests. Koloth had boxed him in perfectly. If Kirk intervened, he'd be breaking the terms of the challenge. But if he didn't, the Yamato would face 3 battlecruisers simultaneously. On the Yamato's bridge, Okita watched the tactical display as 2 more Klingon vessels approached. His crew looked to him, waiting for orders. They'd survived impossible odds before, crossed an impossible distance, faced an entire empire. But 3 Klingon battlecruisers at once? "Sir," Sonata said quietly, "we could use the wave motion gun. At this range, we could take out all 3 vessels with one shot. And vaporize everything within 10,000 kilometers," Okita replied, "including, not possibly, the Enterprise." He shook his head. "No, we don't use planet killers against individual ships. There's always another way." "Then what do we do?" Okita studied the tactical display, his mind racing through possibilities. The Klingon vessels were moving into a triangular formation, a classic pincer maneuver designed to catch the Yamato in a crossfire. The Karg was damaged but still dangerous. The other 2 were fresh, their shields at full strength. 3 against 1. By any conventional tactical analysis, the Yamato was doomed. But Juzo Okita hadn't crossed the galaxy by accepting conventional wisdom. "Lieutenant Mori," he said slowly, an idea forming, "the Enterprise's deflector shields operate on a different principle than our energy barrier, correct?" "Yes, sir. Their shields create a subspace distortion field, while ours use tachyon particle suspension. And if those 2 shield types were to interact, say if we flew close enough to the Enterprise that our barriers overlapped." Mori's eyes widened. The interference pattern would be unpredictable. It could strengthen both shields, or it could cause a catastrophic feedback loop that destroys both ships. Or, Sonata added, catching onto the plan, it could create a combined shield strong enough to protect both vessels from a Klingon attack. Okita nodded slowly. And if we position ourselves correctly, we could use the Enterprise as a shield against two of the Klingon vessels while we deal with the third. That's insane, Maury breathed. Captain Kirk would have to agree to fly his ship into a combat formation without knowing if our shields would be compatible. Yes, he would. Okita stood from his command chair. Which is why I'm going to ask him to do exactly that. Open a channel to the Enterprise. On the Enterprise's bridge, Kirk heard Okita's proposal with a mixture of admiration and concern. Captain, you want to fly our ships side by side? With shields overlapping? That's never been tested. No, it hasn't, Okita agreed over the comm. But unless you have a better idea, we're about to be overwhelmed. This is our only chance. Kirk looked at Spock. Analysis? The theoretical overlap of our deflector shields with the Yamato's energy barrier could create a resonance cascade. The results are impossible to predict with certainty. Spock paused, then added, However, given the alternative is watching the Yamato be destroyed, I would calculate the risk as acceptable. Bones? Kirk asked. Ian McCoy threw up his hands. Don't ask me. I'm a doctor, not a theoretical physicist, but for what it's worth, I think you're both crazy. Kirk smiled. That's the best recommendation I could ask for. He turned back to the view screen. Captain Okita, you've got yourself a wingman. Let's show these Klingons what happens when old school meets new school. Mr. Sulu, bring us about. Match the Yamato's heading and close to 300 meters, port side parallel. Kirk's voice carried the calm authority of a commander who'd stared down death 100 times and lived to tell about it. Sulu's hands moved with practiced precision across the helm controls. Aye, sir. Laying an intercept course. The Enterprise banked gracefully, her sleek hull cutting through space as she moved to rendezvous with the Yamato. And the contrast between the two vessels was stark. The Enterprise all curves and elegance, the Yamato angular and aggressive. One born from peaceful exploration, the other forged in the fires of desperate war. Spock, the moment our shields overlap, I need continuous monitoring of the interference pattern, Kirk ordered. If this is going to blow up in our faces, I want at least 3 seconds warning. Understood, Captain. Spock's fingers danced across his science console, preparing full spectrum analysis of shield harmonics. On the view screen, the 3 Klingon battlecruisers had completed their formation. The damaged Ka'arg hung at the apex of the triangle, while its 2 fresh companions, the IKS Vo and the IKS Katara, moved into flanking positions. Together, they began a slow, deliberate advance, their weapons glowing like the eyes of predators in the dark. They're moving into attack formation, Chekhov reported, his Russian accent thickening with tension. All 3 vessels are charging weapons. Distance to Yamato? Kirk asked. 250 meters in closing, Sulu replied. We'll be in position in 15 seconds. On the Yamato's bridge, Sonata watched the Enterprise approach on his tactical display. Captain, the Enterprise is matching our speed and trajectory. They'll be in position momentarily. Energy barrier status? Fully charged and ready. Once the Enterprise is in position, I'll adjust the barrier frequency to create overlap on our port side. Okita nodded, then opened a ship-wide channel. All hands, this is the captain. We're about to try something that's never been done before. The Enterprise is going to fly alongside us with shields overlapping. This could save us, or it could destroy both ships. But I have faith in this crew, in this ship, and in our new allies. Whatever happens, you've made me proud. Okita out. On the command deck, the young ensigns and veteran officers alike straightened at their stations. They'd followed this man across the galaxy and back. They'd trust him to the end. Enterprise is in position, Maury announced. Sonata, activate shield overlap. Let's see if we're about to make history or become a cautionary tale. Sonata's hands moved across his controls, adjusting energy barrier frequency, extending field to encompass Enterprise's position. Now. The space between the 2 ships shimmered. For a moment, nothing happened. But then the Enterprise's blue deflector shields made contact with the Yamato's invisible tachyon barrier, and reality itself seemed to hiccup. On the Enterprise, Spock's console exploded with data. Fascinating. The tachyon particles from the Yamato's barrier are interacting with our subspace field in a manner I've never observed. The two systems they're synchronizing. Is that good or bad? McCoy demanded. Good, Doctor. Remarkably good. Spock looked up from his readings, and if a Vulcan could be described as excited, he came close. The combined shield strength is approximately 3.7 times greater than either system operating independently. It appears the tachyon particles are using our deflector field as a substrate, while our subspace distortion is stabilizing their energy distribution. Kirk allowed himself a small smile. So we're stronger together. Considerably so, Captain. On the bridge of the Kul'Dun, Commander Koloth watched the two ships merge their defenses with narrowed eyes. That's not possible. Two completely different shield technologies shouldn't be compatible. His science officer was frantically analyzing the readings. Commander, the combined shield strength is reading off our scales. It's stronger than a starbase's defensive grid. Then we'll break it the old-fashioned way, with overwhelming firepower. Koloth opened a channel to his battle group. All ships, concentrate fire on the Yamato. Pour everything we have into their shields until they crack. The three Klingon battlecruisers opened fire simultaneously. Space lit up with fury. Disruptor beams in brilliant green, photon torpedoes trailing fire. Every weapon the Klingon Empire could bring to bear focused on the Yamato's hull. The combined barrage would have vaporized a lesser ship instantly. The shields held. The combined Enterprise-Yamato defensive field absorbed the punishment, the blue shimmer of Federation deflectors blending with the invisible tachyon barrier in a dance of exotic physics. Energy splashed across the shields like water against stone, dissipating harmlessly into space. Shields holding at 92%, Spock reported with what might have been satisfaction. The Klingon weapons are having minimal effect. Return fire, Kirk ordered. Phasers at will, Mr. Chekhov. Target the nearest cruiser's weapons arrays. With pleasure. Ye Captain, the Enterprise's phaser banks spoke, twin beams of orange energy lancing out to strike the IKS Vo. At the same moment, the Yamato's shock cannons fired, blue-white pulses converging on the same target. The combined firepower hammered the Klingon vessel's shields mercilessly. The Vo's shields held, barely, but the ship was forced to break formation, veering away from the withering fire. Target the Katara, Okita ordered. Don't let them regroup. The two ships moved in perfect synchronization, banking together as one unit. Their combined shields protected them both while their weapons covered overlapping fields of fire. It was beautiful in its way, improvised cooperation between vessels from different eras, different philosophies, united in common cause. On the Karg, Commander Kaz realized with dawning horror what was happening. The two ships weren't just defending together, they were fighting as a single tactical unit. Every weakness one ship had, the other covered. The Enterprise's superior maneuverability combined with the Yamato's devastating firepower created a synergy that exceeded the sum of its parts. This is madness, Kaz snarled. They've known each other for less than an hour. How are they coordinating like this? Torak, back at his station with a bandage around his head, had no answer. Unknown, Commander. But their tactics are flawless. Every time we move to exploit a weakness, they've already compensated. The truth was simpler than the Klingons realized. Both Kirk and Okita were masters of their craft, commanders who'd survived impossible situations through skill, instinct, and an almost supernatural ability to read tactical situations. They didn't need extensive coordination. They understood each other on a fundamental level. Both were warriors who preferred peace but excelled at war. Both valued their crews above all else. Both would rather die than surrender. Enterprise, this is Yamato. Okita's voice came over the comm. Recommend we execute a rolling scissors maneuver. You go high, we go low. Catch them in crossfire. Kirk didn't hesitate. Agreed. On my mark. Mark. The Enterprise pulled up sharply, her nose pointing toward galactic north. The Yamato dove, its massive bulk rolling to present its dorsal shock cannons. The two ships spiraled around an invisible axis, their combined shields rotating like a deadly Catherine wheel. The Klingon vessels attempting to maintain firing solutions found themselves caught in an impossible tactical bind. They fire at the Enterprise and expose themselves to the Yamato's devastating shock cannons. Fire at the Yamato and face the Enterprise's precision phasers and photon torpedoes. And all the while, the combined shields made damaging either target nearly impossible. "This is getting embarrassing," McCoy observed from his position near the medical station. "Three Klingon battlecruisers can't handle two ships working together?" "The Klingon military philosophy emphasizes individual glory and single combat," Spock explained. "Cooperative tactics are considered less honorable. They're fighting as three separate ships, not as a coordinated unit." "Their loss," Kirk muttered. "Chekhov, target the Katara's starboard nacelle. Photon torpedoes, full spread." "Torpedoes away!" Four brilliant points of light streaked from the Enterprise's torpedo tubes, or crossing the distance to the Katara in seconds. The Klingon cruiser's shields absorbed two, but the other two penetrated, slamming into the starboard warp nacelle with catastrophic force. The nacelle exploded in a shower of plasma and debris. The Katara lurched violently, its warp field collapsing. The ship was still combat-capable on impulse power, but its ability to pursue or escape was gone. "One down, two to go," Kirk said with grim satisfaction. On the Yamato, Sonata had been tracking all three Klingon vessels simultaneously. "Captain, I'm detecting a power buildup on the Ka'arg. They're routing all available energy to their forward disruptor array." "They're preparing a desperation shot," Okita observed. "All or nothing. If they can't break our shields with conventional weapons, they'll try to punch through with one massive strike. Can our shields handle it? Unknown. The Karg is damaged, but if Commander Kaz is willing to sacrifice his ship, overload his reactor to generate one overwhelming burst, he might crack our combined defenses." Okita's eyes narrowed. "We need to disable that ship before they can fire." "The wave motion gun," Sonata suggested quietly. "No," Okita's voice was firm. "I won't use a planet-killer weapon against a single ship. We find another way." "Captain, we may not have another way. The Karg's power buildup is reaching critical levels. They're going to fire in less than 30 seconds. Okita's mind raced. 30 seconds. Not enough time to maneuver out of range. Not enough time to weaken the Karg's shields enough for a killing shot. But there was one option. Risky, possibly suicidal, but it might work. "Helm, bring us about. Put us on a direct intercept course with the Karg." "Sir?" Nanbu's voice was uncertain. "You heard me, Ensign. Point our bow directly at theirs and give me maximum acceleration." Understanding dawned on Sonata's face. "Captain, you're going to ram them." "Not ram, Commander. Intimidate. The Karg is already damaged. If we show we're willing to ram them, to sacrifice our ship to take them down, Commander Kaz will have to make a choice. Maintain his attack run and die, or break off and survive." "That's a hell of a gamble," Mori breathed. "Welcome to command, Lieutenant." Okita turned to his comm station. "Mori, open a channel to the Enterprise. They need to know what we're about to do." On the Enterprise's bridge, Kirk listened to Okita's plan with a mixture of admiration and alarm. "Captain, that's incredibly risky. If Kaz doesn't break off, you'll both be destroyed." "Then we'd better hope he values his life more than his pride," Okita replied. "Enterprise, recommend you maintain position and prepare to engage the VO if they attempt to interfere." Kirk looked at Spock. The Vulcan raised an eyebrow. "The psychological warfare component is sound, Captain. Klingons respect courage and strength. A willingness to sacrifice one's own ship to destroy an enemy is the ultimate expression of both." "Or the ultimate expression of insanity," McCoy muttered. "Sometimes there's not much difference, Bones." Kirk turned back to the view screen. "Captain Okita, good luck. We'll keep the others off your back." The Yamato broke formation, its combined shields with the Enterprise dissolving as the battleship accelerated toward the damaged Karg. On the Yamato's bridge, warning klaxons wailed as the distance closed rapidly. 5,000 meters to Karg, Nanbu reported, his voice steady despite his white knuckles on the helm controls. 4,000, 3,000. On the Karg's bridge, Commander Kaz watched the Yamato approach with growing disbelief. They're not slowing down. They're actually going to— "Commander, recommend we break off," Torak shouted. "At this range, if they hit us—" "Maintain course," Kaz roared. "We have one shot to destroy that cursed ship. Fire the—" 2,000 meters, Nanbu called out. The Karg's massive forward disruptor array reached critical charge. One more second and it would fire. A concentrated beam of energy powerful enough to crack a planet's crust, all focused on a single point. It would either shatter the Yamato's shields or kill both ships in a catastrophic explosion. 1,000 meters! On the Karg, Torak grabbed his commander's shoulder. "Kaz, if we don't break off now, we're dead." Time seemed to slow. Commander Kaz stared at the view screen, at the massive bulk of the Yamato bearing down on his position like an ancient warship preparing to ram. He saw the determination in that approach, the absolute commitment. This wasn't a bluff. These warriors from the past were willing to die to take him with them. And in that moment, Kaz realized the truth. He wasn't. "Break off!" he screamed. "Emergency maneuvers! You get us out of here!" The Karg's helm threw the damaged cruiser into a desperate spiral, thrusters firing at maximum to escape the Yamato's charge. The forward disruptor array, still charged to critical levels, fired, but the Karg's sudden maneuver threw off the aim. The massive energy beam screamed past the Yamato's starboard side, missing by meters, and dissipated harmlessly into space. On the Yamato's bridge, the crew erupted in cheers. The gambit had worked. "Helm, bring us about," Okita ordered calmly, as if he hadn't just played chicken with a Klingon battlecruiser at point-blank range. "Rejoin formation with the Enterprise." As the Yamato swung back toward its Federation ally, Kirk opened a channel. "Captain Okita, that was either the bravest thing I've ever seen or the craziest. I'm still not sure which. In my experience," Captain Kirk, "the two are often indistinguishable. The Enterprise and Yamato reformed their combined shield barrier, just as the IKS Vo attempted another attack run. But the heart had gone out of the Klingon assault. The Karg was damaged and demoralized, its commander having been psychologically broken by the Yamato's charge. The Katara was crippled, unable to maneuver effectively, and the Vo, seeing two of its companions compromised, hesitated. On the Kul'Dun, Commander Koloth watched the battle with a mixture of frustration and grudging respect. These two ships, one ancient, one modern, had not only survived his trap but turned it against him. 3 Klingon battlecruisers, and they couldn't bring down one Federation vessel and a museum piece. His tactical officer spoke quietly. "Commander, we could enter the battle ourselves. The Kul'Dun is fresh and fully armed." "No," Koloth said slowly. "We gave our word that this would be a test. One ship against one ship. That I sent reinforcements was a tactical improvisation. But to enter the battle myself now would be to dishonor the Empire." "Then what do we do?" Koloth stared at the view screen, at the two ships moving in perfect synchronization, their combined strength greater than the sum of their parts. He'd wanted to see if the Yamato was worth the risk of claiming. Now he had his answer, and it wasn't what he'd expected. The Yamato was valuable, yes, but not because of its weapons or its technology. It was valuable because of its crew. Warriors who'd crossed impossible distances, faced impossible odds, and never surrendered. Warriors who, in less than an hour, he had formed a bond with the Enterprise crew strong enough to defeat a superior force. That kind of spirit couldn't be captured or reverse-engineered. It could only be respected. "Open a channel to all ships," Koloth ordered. On the bridges of the Karg, Vo, and Katara, the order came as a shock. On the Enterprise and Yamato, it came as a surprise. Koloth's face appeared on all view screens simultaneously. "This is Commander Koloth to all vessels. Ceasefire. Stand down." The space around the combatants fell silent, weapons powering down. Kirk and Okita exchanged glances across the communication channel, both wary. Was this another Klingon trick? "Captain Kirk, Captain Okita," Koloth continued. "The Empire concedes this engagement. Your combined tactics and courage have proven more effective than our superior numbers. The test is concluded." Just like that? Kirk asked suspiciously. Just like that. Koloth smiled. A genuine smile this time, not the predatory grin from before. You've demonstrated that the Yamato, while ancient in design, is crewed by warriors worthy of respect. And you, Kirk, have once again proven why the Enterprise is spoken of with caution in Klingon war councils. Does this mean you're withdrawing your claim to the Yamato? Okita asked. For now. But understand this, Captain Okita, the Klingon Empire will be watching your progress with great interest. A ship like yours, in the hands of warriors like your crew, could shift the balance of power in this quadrant. Koloth leaned forward slightly. Use it wisely, and perhaps, one day, we might meet again under different circumstances. The transmission ended. Moments later, the four Klingon battlecruisers turned as one and warped away, leaving the Enterprise and Yamato alone in the void. On both bridges, crews slumped in their chairs, exhaustion and relief washing over them in equal measure. Secure from battle stations, Kirk ordered. Mr. Spock, damage report. Shields at 48% but recharging. Minor damage to secondary systems. No casualties. Kirk nodded, then opened a channel to the Yamato. Captain Okita, status? On the Yamato's bridge, Sanada was checking his instruments. Energy barrier at 63%. Hull integrity maintained. All systems nominal. He paused, then added with a smile, and no casualties. Outstanding. Kirk stood from his command chair, feeling the tension drain from his muscles. Captain, I'd say that calls for a celebration. Would you and your senior staff care to join us for dinner? I think our crews have earned it. Okita smiled, a rare expression that transformed his stern features. We would be honored, Captain Kirk. And I believe my crew would enjoy tasting food from 300 years in their future. Fair warning, it's replicated, not home-cooked. After 200 years in stasis, Captain, anything that isn't military rations will taste like a feast. As the two ships prepared to stand down from combat readiness, McCoy sidled up to Kirk's chair. You know, Jim, when I got up this morning, I didn't think I'd be watching two ships from different centuries team up to fight off Klingons. This job never gets boring, Kirk laughed. Boring, Bones? In Starfleet? That's not in the job description. On the view screen, the Yamato hung in space, its running lights glowing against the stars. An ancient vessel from Earth's darkest hour, now allied with the Federation's finest. Together, they'd faced impossible odds and emerged victorious. It was, Kirk reflected, exactly the kind of miracle that made exploring the final frontier worthwhile. The Enterprise's recreation deck had been hastily converted into a dining hall grand enough to host both crews. Tables had been arranged in a broad semicircle, the center left open in the tradition of both Starfleet and the old Cosmo Navy, symbolizing unity and shared purpose. The food synthesizers had been working overtime, producing dishes that ranged from traditional Japanese cuisine to hearty Federation staples. Captain Kirk stood at the head of the main table, raising a glass of Saurian brandy. Around him, officers from both ships mingled with an ease that belied the fact that they'd met mere hours ago. Okita sat to Kirk's right, his senior staff arrayed beside him. Spock occupied the left, with McCoy, Scotty, and the rest of the Enterprise's command crew filling out the ranks. To new friends, Kirk declared, his voice carrying across the room. And to the spirit of cooperation that transcends time itself. To new friends, the assembled officers echoed, raising their glasses. Okita stood, his own glass held high. And to the Enterprise and her crew. You gave us more than tactical support today. You gave us hope that the future we fought for was worth every sacrifice. The toast was drunk, and conversation resumed as crews from two eras exchanged stories, compared notes, and discovered common ground in the shared experience of serving on vessels that sailed the stars. At the main table, Montgomery Scott had cornered Lieutenant Commander Sanada, his Scottish brogue thick with excitement. Laddie, you have to explain to me how your wave motion engine works. I've been over your power signatures a dozen times and I still can't figure out how you're generating that kind of output without tearing a hole in spacetime. Sanada smiled, pulling up a holographic display on a borrowed datapad. The key is the tachyon cascade. We're not generating power in the traditional sense. We're tapping into faster-than-light particles that exist in a state of constant motion. The wave motion core acts as a resonance chamber, converting that motion into usable energy. But tachyons are theoretical, Scotty protested. Mice, we can detect them, aye, but harnessing them? That's impossible. So we're your matter transporters, according to our physics, Sonata countered. Yet, I arrived on this ship by having my atoms disassembled and reassembled. Mr. Scott, I think we've both learned that impossible is a relative term. Scotty's eyes gleamed. Aye, you've got a point there. Tell me, have you ever considered applying your tachyon principles to warp field generation? If we could create a hybrid system? The two engineers fell into technical discussion so dense that nearby officers quietly edged away, leaving them to their theories and calculations. At another table, Yuki Mori sat with Lieutenant Uhura, the two communication specialists comparing notes on signal processing and universal translation protocols. Now, Mori was fascinated by the Enterprise's subspace communication array, while Uhura marveled at the Yamato's ability to maintain contact across 148,000 light-years using pre-Federation technology. It was the Iskandarians who helped us solve the long-range problem, Mori explained. They transmitted the wave motion engine plans across that distance. We reverse-engineered their communication principles and integrated them into our own systems. Remarkable, Uhura said, her melodious voice warm with genuine admiration. To think you maintained contact with Earth from halfway across the galaxy. Our long-range communications are impressive, but we rely on subspace relay stations. You did it with standalone technology. Necessity drives innovation, Mori replied. When the alternative is dying alone in the dark between stars, you find ways to make impossible things work. The conversation shifted to lighter topics: music, culture, the universal constants that persisted regardless of era. Uhura played a few bars of contemporary Federation music on her datapad, and Mori shared recordings from pre-war Earth, songs that had been preserved through the radioactive apocalypse and carried across the stars as reminders of home. Near the center of the room, Chekhov had struck up a conversation with several of the Yamato's younger crew members, his enthusiasm infectious as he described the Enterprise's 5-year mission. And then Captain Kirk, he talked the computer into destroying itself with pure logic. Can you imagine? One of the Yamato's ensigns, a young man named Tokugawa, laughed. That's nothing. Captain Okita once convinced a Gamila's fleet commander to stand down by demonstrating we had the wave motion gun pointed at his homeworld. He never fired a shot, just made them understand we could if we wanted to. The entire fleet withdrew. The art of the bluff, Chekhov acknowledged with a grin. Wary Russian of him. At the head table, Kirk watched his crew interact with their counterparts from another time and felt a profound sense of satisfaction. This was what Starfleet was about, not just exploration and defense, but building bridges across the impossible gulfs that separated people. Today, it was a gulf of time. Tomorrow, it might be a gulf of species, culture, or philosophy. But the principle remained the same. Reach out, find common ground, and build something stronger together. Your crew is remarkable, Captain, Okita observed, eye following Kirk's gaze. Young, idealistic, but also competent and professional. They remind me of my own crew when we first set out for Iskandar. They've been tested, Kirk replied, more times than I'd like to count, but they always come through. That's what makes them the best crew in Starfleet. High praise. Earned praise. Kirk turned to face Okita directly. Captain, we need to discuss what happens next. You and your crew are displaced from your own time. Your mission is complete. Earth is saved, thriving beyond anything you could have imagined. But you can't go home. Home for you is 200 years in the past. Okita's expression didn't change, but Kirk saw the shadow that passed behind his eyes. I know. We've been discussing it among the senior staff. The question is whether we try to return to our own time, or whether we accept this new era as our home. Can you return? Spock interjected, having been listening to the conversation while simultaneously sampling several dishes. The dimensional weapon that displaced you, do you have the technical specifications to recreate it? We do, Sonata confirmed from across the table, having temporarily abandoned his discussion with Scotty. The Gamila's dimensional technology was well documented in our tactical database. In theory, we could generate another temporal displacement event. But, Kirk prompted, sensing the hesitation, but it would require enormous power, Sonata continued. More than the wave motion engine can safely generate in controlled conditions. And the calculations would have to be perfect. Nay, single error, and we could end up anywhere in time, or nowhere at all. Additionally, Okita added, there's the question of causality. If we return to 2199, having experienced the future, would our knowledge of what's to come alter the timeline? Could we accidentally prevent the very future we've seen? Spock nodded thoughtfully. A valid concern. The temporal mechanics involved are highly unstable. Any action you took in your original time could create a divergent timeline, one in which the Federation never forms or forms differently. The risk of paradox is substantial. McCoy leaned forward, his blue eyes intense. So what you're saying is, you're stuck here. 200 years away from everyone you knew, everything familiar. We knew the risks when we left Earth for Iskandar, Okita said quietly. We accepted that we might never return. That we did return once was more than we'd hoped for. If fate has given us a second chance at life, but in a different time, then we'll make the most of it. The question is how, Kirk said. The Federation will have questions about your vessel, your weapons, your technology. Starfleet Command is going to want answers. And I'll be honest with you, Captain. There will be those who see the wave motion gun as too dangerous to allow to exist. They would demand we disarm? Okita's voice was neutral, but Kirk heard the steel underneath. Some will. Others will want to study the technology, possibly replicate it for Starfleet use. You need to understand, in this era, weapons capable of destroying planets are heavily regulated. General Order 24 exists, but the authorization requirements are extreme. On a single ship with the independent capability to execute planetary destruction, Kirk spread his hands. It makes people nervous. As it should, Okita replied. Captain Kirk, I fired the wave motion gun 14 times. Each time I saw the devastation it caused. Entire fleets vaporized, asteroids reduced to atoms, dimensional barriers torn open. It's not a weapon, it's a curse. A necessary curse that saved my crew and my world, but a curse nonetheless. He paused, then continued. I have no desire to fire it ever again, but I will not disarm. The Yamato is a warship built for a specific purpose. To remove its primary weapon would be to dishonor everyone who died to make our mission possible. I will not do that. The table fell silent. It was Spock who spoke next, his voice carefully measured. Captain Okita, I believe I understand your position. However, you must also understand the Federation's perspective. We have achieved relative peace in this sector through careful diplomacy and the measured application of force. The introduction of a weapon system as powerful as yours could destabilize that balance. Then what do you propose? Sonata asked. That we hide the Yamato's capabilities? Pretend we're just an antiquated vessel with unusually strong shields? No, Kirk said firmly. Deception would only make things worse. But there might be a middle ground. He looked at Okita. What if the Yamato became part of Starfleet, not as a museum piece or a research subject, but as an active vessel with a specific mission? Go on, Okita said cautiously. Starfleet has deep space exploration missions, regions of space so dangerous or remote that standard vessels can't safely operate there. The Typhon Expanse, the Briar Patch, the Nekrit Expanse. Areas where extraordinary defensive capabilities and firepower might be necessary for survival, not conquest. Kirk leaned forward, warming to his idea. The Yamato would be assigned to these missions. Your crew would be given Starfleet commissions, with appropriate training in Federation protocols and procedures. But you'd maintain operational independence. You'd report to Starfleet Command, but you'd have the freedom to operate as you see fit within your mission parameters. And the wave motion gun? Okita asked. Would remain under your control. You'd be required to log any discharge and report it to Starfleet Command. But the decision to fire would be yours as commanding officer, just like any other Starfleet captain with the authority to execute General Order 24. McCoy whistled softly. Jim, you're essentially proposing to make them a specialized warfare unit. Starfleet's not going to like that. Starfleet doesn't have to like it, Kirk countered. They just have to recognize the reality. The Yamato exists, it's powerful, and it's crewed by experienced warriors who've proven they can be trusted. Better to bring them into the fold, give them purpose and oversight, than to try to force them to disarm or disappear. Okita exchanged glances with Sanada and Mori. An entire conversation passed between them in seconds. Years of shared experience, trust, and understanding compressed into a look. We would need to discuss this with the full crew, Okita finally said. This isn't a decision I can make unilaterally. We fought as the United Nations Cosmo Navy. Becoming part of Starfleet would be a significant change. Of course, Kirk agreed. Take all the time you need. But I should warn you, Starfleet Command is going to want a resolution soon. The Klingon Empire knows about you now. Word will spread. You'll have visitors, some friendly, some not. Better to have Federation protection and support than to face the galaxy alone. Agreed. Okita stood, raising his glass once more. Captain Kirk, you've given us much to consider. But for tonight, let's set aside politics and protocol. Tonight, we celebrate. Two crews from different times united in common cause. Tomorrow we'll worry about the future. Kirk stood as well, smiling. I can drink to that. To the Yamato and the Enterprise. May their alliance be the first of many. The toast was drunk with enthusiasm, and the celebration continued long into the ship's night cycle. Stories were exchanged, friendships forged, and bonds created that would endure across the years to come. In a quiet corner, Spock found himself in conversation with Captain Okita, discussing the philosophical implications of temporal displacement. Do you believe in fate, Commander? Okita asked, swirling the synthahol in his glass. I am a scientist, Captain. I deal in probabilities and observable phenomena, not mysticism. That's not an answer, Spock raised an eyebrow. No, I suppose it isn't. He paused, then continued. I will say this. The odds of your vessel emerging from a temporal displacement event at precisely the moment and location where the Enterprise would investigate are astronomical. The probability that your arrival would coincide with a Klingon presence, forcing a confrontation that would forge an alliance, the numbers are almost meaningless. Almost? Almost, but not quite. Perhaps there are patterns in the universe that we do not yet understand. Quantum entanglement across time, causal loops that create their own necessity. Or perhaps, Spock allowed himself the smallest of smiles. Fate is simply another word for the universe's tendency toward optimal outcomes. Okita chuckled. Spoken like a true Vulcan, philosophically profound while maintaining logical deniability. It's a gift. Across the room, McCoy had found himself in the company of the Yamato's medical officer, Dr. Sato, comparing notes on treating radiation exposure and combat injuries. The two doctors spoke the universal language of their profession, concern for their patients, frustration with command decisions that put people in harm's way, and a dark humor that came from seeing too much death. You know what the worst part is? McCoy said, gesturing with his glass. No matter how many times you tell them, the captains, the admirals, the commanders, no matter how many times you explain the medical consequences, they still make the same damn decisions. Charge into danger, engage superior forces, risk everything for some principle or mission parameter. Sato nodded knowingly. And then they come to us expecting miracles. Doctor, can you cure this radiation poisoning we got flying through a gamma ray burst? Doctor, can you regenerate this limb we lost fighting overwhelming odds? As if medical science can undo every idiotic tactical decision. Exactly, McCoy clinked his glass against Sato's. Finally, someone who understands. Of course, Sato continued with a slight smile. We still perform those miracles when we can. Because for all their faults, these captains and their crews are trying to save lives, protect innocence, make the universe a better place. Yeah, McCoy admitted grudgingly. That's the annoying part. It's hard to stay mad at them when their hearts are in the right place. The evening wore on, and gradually the gathering began to wind down. Crew members from both ships returned to their stations or quarters, carrying with them the warmth of new friendships and shared experiences. Kirk found himself on the observation deck with Okita, staring out at the stars in comfortable silence. The Yamato hung in space nearby, its ancient hull illuminated by the Enterprise's running lights. She's beautiful, Kirk said quietly. In her own way. Not sleek like modern vessels, but there's something honest about her. No pretense, no unnecessary aesthetics, just function and purpose. She was built in 3 months, Okita replied, from the salvaged wreckage of a warship sunk over 200 years before we launched. We had neither the time nor resources for beauty. We built her to save our world, and that's what she did. And now? Now, Okita exhaled slowly. Now she needs a new purpose. My crew needs a new purpose. We can't go home. Yet we can't undo the years we've lost. But we can move forward. We can find meaning in this new era. Starfleet could use a ship like yours, Kirk said. And more importantly, it could use a crew like yours. Warriors with experience, honor, and the wisdom to know when not to fight. You assume we'd accept your proposal? I assume you'll make the right decision for your people, whatever that is. Kirk turned to face Okita. But I hope you'll stay. I think the Federation is better with you in it than without you. Okita met Kirk's gaze. You know what convinced me? Not the tactical advantages of Federation membership, not the promise of supplies and support, not even the diplomatic protection. What then? The way your crew and mine interacted tonight, the ease of it, the natural camaraderie. We're from different times, and different circumstances, but at our core, we're the same. Explorers, warriors, dreamers, people who chose to sail into the unknown because we believed in something greater than ourselves. Okita smiled. I think my crew would be honored to join Starfleet. If Starfleet will have us. Kirk extended his hand. Welcome to the Federation, Captain Okita. I have a feeling you're going to fit right in. As they shook hands, neither man noticed the small figure watching from the corridor outside the observation deck. But Spock saw, and he noted it in his log, a moment of unity between warriors from different eras, the kind of moment that changed the course of history. The Yamato had found a new home, and the Federation had gained allies whose courage and determination would echo across the stars. The celebration had ended hours ago, but sleep eluded Captain Okita. He stood alone on the Yamato's bridge, the lights dimmed to night watch levels, staring out at the vast starfield beyond the view screen. Somewhere out there, 148,000 light-years distant, was Iskandar, the world that had saved Earth, the destination that had defined his life's purpose. Can't sleep either, Captain. Okita turned to find Sanada emerging from the turbolift, 2 cups of coffee in hand. Old habits, Commander. I used to walk the bridge during night watch when we were en route to Iskandar. The quiet helped me think. And what are you thinking about now? Sanada handed him one of the cups. Whether we're making the right choice, joining Starfleet, accepting this era as our home. Okita sipped the coffee. Real coffee. He's synthesized by Federation technology, but chemically identical to the genuine article. We have a crew of 114 souls who followed us across the galaxy and back. Now we're asking them to follow us into a future they never chose. They'll follow, Sanada said with quiet confidence. You know they will. You led them through hell and brought them out the other side. If you say this is the way forward, they'll trust you. That's what worries me. Okita set down his cup. What if I'm wrong? What if bringing a warship with planet-killing capabilities into this era of peace creates more problems than it solves? Captain Kirk sees the best in us. But what about the rest of Starfleet? What about the Federation Council? Before Sanada could respond, the communications console beeped softly. Lieutenant Maury's voice came through, tired but alert. Captain, I'm picking up a priority transmission. It's from Starfleet Command, sir. They're requesting to speak with you immediately. Okita and Sanada exchanged glances. That was fast, Sanada muttered. Put it through to the bridge, Lieutenant, and wake the senior staff. I suspect we're about to have our first real test as potential Federation members. Within minutes, the Yamato's senior officers had assembled. On the main view screen, the image of Starfleet headquarters appeared. Specifically, the office of Admiral Comac, one of Starfleet's most influential flag officers. The Admiral was a stern-looking man in his 60s, his uniform impeccable, his expression neutral but his eyes sharp with intelligence. Captain Okita, I presume, Comac began without preamble. I am Admiral Comac, Starfleet Operations. I've been reviewing Captain Kirk's preliminary report on your situation. Admiral. Okita stood at attention. I understand this is an unusual circumstance. Unusual doesn't begin to cover it, Captain. Comac leaned forward. In the past 6 hours, I've learned that a warship from Earth's past has appeared in Federation space, armed with weapons we can barely comprehend, crewed by personnel who should by all rights be dead for 2 centuries. And to top it off, Captain Kirk has invoked General Order 104 and proposed full Starfleet integration for your vessel. With respect, Admiral, Captain Kirk's proposal was made in good faith. I'm not questioning Kirk's faith, Captain. I'm questioning his judgment. Comac's tone was clipped. Do you have any idea what kind of political firestorm this is going to create? Or the Klingons already know about you? By now, so do the Romulans. Every power in the quadrant will be demanding information about your capabilities. And here's Captain Kirk, proposing we just welcome you into Starfleet with open arms. Sonata bristled. Admiral, our capabilities were earned through sacrifice and desperation. We didn't ask to be thrown into this era. I'm aware of that, Commander. Comac held up a hand. And I'm not unsympathetic to your situation. But sympathy doesn't change the strategic realities. Your vessel represents a massive power differential. In the wrong hands, that wave motion gun could tip the balance of power in this entire sector. Then it's fortunate we're not the wrong hands, Okita said quietly. Comac studied him for a long moment. I've read the tactical analysis of your engagement with the Klingon battle group. 4 battlecruisers, and you and the Enterprise sent them running. Impressive. But it also raises questions. Questions about command structure, rules of engagement, proper authorization for weapons deployment. We defended ourselves against unprovoked aggression, Okita replied. Under any military code, that's justified. Under Starfleet regulations, any discharge of weapons with planet-level destructive potential requires authorization from at least 2 flag officers and documented evidence of imminent threat to Federation worlds. Comac paused. You didn't use the wave motion gun in that engagement. Why not? Because it wasn't necessary, Okita's voice was firm. The wave motion gun is a weapon of last resort. Always has been, always will be. I will not use it unless there is no other option. Words, Captain. I need more than words. I need guarantees. With respect, Admiral, there are no guarantees in war. You know that as well as I do. Okita stepped closer to the view screen. But I can offer you this. My record. 296,000 light-years traveled. Dozens of engagements with Gamila's forces. 14 discharges of the wave motion gun, each one documented, each one necessary to preserve my crew and my mission. If you doubt my judgment, review those records. Commander Sonata can provide the tactical logs. Comac was silent for a moment, then nodded slowly. I'll review them. But understand, Captain, if the Federation is going to grant you asylum and integrate your vessel into Starfleet, we need assurances. The wave motion gun cannot be fired without proper authorization. Are you willing to accept that restriction? Okita felt his jaw tighten. Accepting external authorization for his primary weapon meant surrendering a degree of command autonomy he'd never given up, but it also meant protection, support, and a future for his crew. I will accept authorization requirements, Okita said carefully, provided they're reasonable and don't prevent me from defending my ship in emergency situations. If my vessel is under immediate threat and I cannot contact Starfleet Command in time, I retain the right to use all available weapons at my discretion. That's standard Starfleet protocol for all captains, Comac acknowledged. You'd be treated no differently than Kirk or any other commanding officer. Fair enough? Fair enough. Good. Then here's what's going to happen. Comac pulled up a datapad. I'm ordering the Enterprise to escort you to Starbase 11. Once there, you and your crew will undergo a comprehensive evaluation, medical screenings, psychological assessments, technical analysis of your vessel, and intensive briefings on Federation history, law, and Starfleet regulations. How long will this take? Sonata asked. 4 to 6 weeks, depending on various factors. During that time, I'll be presenting your case to the Federation Council. If they approve, and that's a big if, you'll be offered Starfleet commissions with appropriate ranks and assignments. And if they don't approve? Mori asked quietly. Comac's expression softened slightly. Then we'll work something out. Asylum, at minimum. Civilian status. The Federation doesn't abandon people who need help. But I won't lie to you. Integrating a warship of your capabilities into Starfleet is going to be a hard sell, especially with the current political climate. What political climate? Okita asked. The Admiral hesitated, then sighed. Captain, you've been asleep for 200 years. You missed a lot. The Federation has been at peace, relatively speaking, for decades. We've focused on exploration and diplomacy over military expansion. There's a strong pacifist movement in the Federation Council. Many members believe that weapons like yours represent everything Starfleet should move away from, not embrace. In other words, Sonata said, there are people who want us disarmed or gone. Yes, but there are also people who recognize that peace is maintained through strength. That exploration sometimes requires the ability to defend oneself against hostile forces. Comac leaned back in his chair. I'm one of those people, Captain Okita. I believe your vessel and crew could serve the Federation well. But you're going to have to prove it, to me, to Starfleet, and to the Council. We will, Okita said simply. I hope so, because if you don't… Comac trailed off, then shook his head. Starbase 11, Captain. The Enterprise will escort you. Admiral Pike will oversee your evaluation personally. Pike? Okita's brow furrowed. I thought Captain Kirk mentioned Admiral Pike was… Christopher Pike is retired from active ship command, Comac clarified. He's currently serving as Commandant of Starbase 11 and head of the Starfleet Advanced Tactical Training Program. He's also one of the finest officers Starfleet has ever produced. If anyone can assess your capabilities fairly, it's him. The transmission ended, leaving the Yamato's bridge in thoughtful silence. Well, Sonata finally said, that could have gone worse. Could have gone better too, Mori added. 4 to 6 weeks of evaluations? They're going to dissect us like laboratory specimens. Let them, Okita said firmly. We have nothing to hide. Our mission was just, our methods were necessary, and our record speaks for itself. He turned to his crew. Pass the word to all hands. We're proceeding to Starbase 11 under Enterprise escort. During the journey, I want everyone to study Federation history and Starfleet regulations. We need to understand this era if we're going to be part of it. Aye, sir, Sonata acknowledged. I'll coordinate with the Enterprise for educational materials. As the senior staff dispersed to their duties, Okita returned to staring at the view screen. The decision had been made. There was no turning back now. On the Enterprise bridge, Kirk had listened to the transmission from Starfleet Command with a mixture of relief and concern. Admiral Comac's response had been better than he'd feared, but more restrictive than he'd hoped. Starbase 11, McCoy mused from his position near the medical station. At least it's Pike who'll be evaluating them. He's fair. And thorough, Kirk added. If there are any issues with the Yamato or its crew, Pike will find them. Spock looked up from his science station. Captain, I've been analyzing the political implications of the Yamato's integration into Starfleet. The pacifist faction in the Federation Council will likely oppose any proposal that involves accepting a vessel with planet-killing capabilities. However, the recent Klingon incursion into Federation space, along with the Yamato's demonstrated defensive capabilities, may provide sufficient justification. In other words, it's going to be a fight, Kirk concluded. A political one, yes. Though, given the Yamato's combat effectiveness, perhaps fight is an appropriate metaphor. Kirk smiled slightly. Set course for Starbase 11, Mr. Sulu. Warp factor 4, and maintain standard escort formation with the Yamato. Aye, sir. Course laid in. As the Enterprise and Yamato aligned their trajectories and accelerated to warp, neither crew knew that their journey to Starbase 11 would be anything but routine. In the depths of space, our other forces were already moving, forces that would test the alliance between these two ships in ways neither captain could anticipate. 3 days into the journey, the first indication of trouble came from an unexpected source. Captain, I'm detecting a distress signal, Uhura reported, her hand flying to her earpiece. It's faint, heavily degraded. Origin bearing 042 Mark 7, distance approximately 4 light-years. Kirk leaned forward. Can you identify the source? Negative, sir. The signal is fragmentary, but it's definitely Federation in origin. Emergency frequencies. Spock was already analyzing the data. Captain, the distress signal appears to be approximately 7 hours old. Given signal degradation and our current distance, the originating vessel was likely attacked or suffered catastrophic system failure. Mr. Sulu, you alter course to intercept. Mr. Chekhov, go to yellow alert. Kirk opened a channel to the Yamato. Captain Okita, we're responding to a distress signal. Request you maintain current heading to Starbase 11. We'll rejoin you once we've investigated. Okita's face appeared on the view screen. Captain Kirk, with respect, splitting up seems unwise. If this is a trap, then the Enterprise can handle it. You have your orders from Starfleet Command. Proceed to Starbase 11. Captain, my ship is perfectly capable of providing assistance. 2 ships are better than 1, especially if hostile forces are involved. Kirk started to object, then paused. Okita had a point, and more importantly, this could be an opportunity for the Yamato to demonstrate its value to Starfleet. Responding to a distress call, providing aid, and operating within Federation protocols. You're right, Kirk acknowledged. Both ships will investigate. But Captain, this needs to be done by the book. Standard Federation rescue protocols. No unnecessary use of force, no showing off with exotic weaponry. Okita smiled slightly. Understood, Captain. We'll be on our best behavior. The 2 ships altered course together, accelerating toward the source of the distress signal. As they closed the distance, the signal grew stronger and more disturbing. Captain, I'm getting more data now, Uhura said, her voice tight. The distress call is from the USS Intrepid, Vulcan-crewed Constitution-class starship. They're reporting... Oh my god. Report, Lieutenant. Sir, they're reporting a contamination event. Some kind of energy-based life form has infected their ship. Crew casualties are severe. Even the last transmission cuts off mid-sentence. Spock had gone absolutely still at his station. Captain, the Intrepid carries a crew of 400, all Vulcan. If there have been casualties, Kirk knew what Spock wasn't saying. Vulcans were more resistant to many hazards than humans. If something had taken down a Vulcan-crewed ship, it was extraordinarily dangerous. Mr. Sulu, full impulse. Shields up, weapons on standby. Kirk opened a channel to the Yamato. Captain Okita, we may be heading into a hot zone. Recommend raising your energy barrier and preparing for potential hostile contact. Already done, Captain. Yamato is at battle stations. The 2 ships dropped out of warp simultaneously, and what they found chilled even the most seasoned officers to their cores. The USS Intrepid hung dead in space, all lights extinguished, the hull intact but completely lifeless. No power readings, no energy signatures, nothing. It was as if the ship had simply died. And surrounding it, like predators circling wounded prey, were ships unlike anything in Federation records. Organic-looking vessels with flowing, asymmetrical designs, their hulls pulsing with sickly green bioluminescence. 5 of them, each roughly the size of a Klingon battlecruiser. Captain, Spock said, his voice carefully controlled. I'm reading no life signs aboard the Intrepid. 400 Vulcans, all gone. Before Kirk could respond, the alien vessels turned as one toward the Enterprise and Yamato. And from deep within their organic hulls, weapons began to charge, weapons that glowed with the same terrible green light that had consumed the Intrepid. The trap had been sprung, and now both ships would have to fight for their lives against an enemy that could kill an entire starship's crew without leaving a mark. Red alert! Kirk's voice cut through the bridge like a blade. All hands to battle stations. The Enterprise's klaxons wailed as the crew moved with practiced efficiency. Shields snapped to full power, weapon systems armed, tactical displays lighting up with threat assessments. On the view screen, the 5 alien vessels began spreading into an attack formation, their bioluminescent hulls pulsing with an almost hypnotic rhythm. Captain, sensors are having difficulty penetrating their hulls, Spock reported, his fingers flying across his console. The energy signature is unlike anything in our database. Organic components intermixed with metallic structures. They appear to be grown rather than built. Life signs? Inconclusive. The vessels may be living entities themselves, or they may contain biological components that obscure conventional scans. On the Yamato's bridge, Sonata was reaching similar conclusions. Captain, these ships don't match any known configuration. The hull composition is reading as partially organic, similar to what we encountered with some of the Gamila's biomechanical weapons. Weapons status? Okita demanded. All shock cannons charged and ready. Wave motion gun at standby. We can bring it to full charge in 90 seconds if needed. Keep it at standby. I don't want to escalate unless necessary. Okita opened a channel to the Enterprise. Captain Kirk, any identification on these vessels? Negative, Captain. They're a complete unknown. Kirk leaned forward. Uhura. I'll try hailing them, all frequencies. Uhura's hands moved across her communications panel. Hailing on all standard channels. No response, Captain. Wait, I'm picking up something. It's not language, more like a harmonic resonance. Almost like whale song, but artificial. Can you translate it? The Universal Translator is trying, but it's having difficulty finding a linguistic framework. The signal seems to be operating on multiple frequencies simultaneously. The lead alien vessel suddenly pulsed bright green, and a beam of sickly energy lanced across space toward the Enterprise. Evasive maneuvers, Kirk shouted. Sulu's hands were already moving. The Enterprise banked hard to starboard, her impulse engines flaring as she dodged the energy beam by meters. The beam continued past, dissipating harmlessly into space. But where it passed, space itself seemed to shimmer and distort. What the hell was that? McCoy demanded from his station. Spock was analyzing the readings with furious intensity. Captain, that energy beam appears to disrupt molecular cohesion at a quantum level. If it had struck our shields, it would have bypassed them entirely and begun breaking down the ship's hull at the atomic level. Like what happened to the Intrepid, Kirk realized with horror. Precisely. These vessels appear to be equipped with weapons specifically designed to penetrate conventional defenses and destroy matter directly. Two more alien ships opened fire, their beams converging on the Yamato. Nanbu threw the ancient battleship into a ponderous roll, the beams passing above and below the hull. But the Yamato's size and mass worked against it. The ship simply couldn't maneuver with the Enterprise's agility. Return fire, Okita commanded. Shock cannons, target the lead vessel. The Yamato's massive shock cannons spoke with thunder, brilliant blue-white pulses screaming toward the alien ship. The energy struck the organic hull and penetrated. The alien vessel shuddered, chunks of biomechanical matter exploding outward, green ichor spilling into space. Direct hit, Sonata reported. Enemy vessel is damaged but still operational. Their hull is regenerating. On the Yamato's view screen, the impossible sight unfolded. The wounded alien ship's hull was literally growing back, organic tissue flowing like liquid metal to seal the breach. Within seconds, the damage was completely repaired. They can regenerate, Maury breathed. Ark, how do we fight something that can heal itself? Kirk was wondering the same thing. Mr. Chekhov, phasers, maximum power. Target the same vessel the Yamato damaged. The Enterprise's phaser banks fired, orange beams of coherent energy striking the alien ship with pinpoint precision. The organic hull burned and charred under the assault, more of the green ichor bleeding into space. But even as the Enterprise maintained fire, the regeneration continued. It's not enough, Spock observed. We're inflicting damage faster than it can regenerate, but not fast enough to destroy the vessel. At current rates, we would need to maintain continuous fire for approximately 7.3 minutes to achieve critical destruction. We don't have 7 minutes, Kirk said grimly. The other 4 alien vessels were moving into firing positions. Are their weapons charging? Evasive pattern Kirk Delta 2. Keep us moving. The Enterprise dove, rolled, and weaved through space, her movements a deadly dance designed to make her impossible to target. Alien energy beams crisscrossed the void, missing by meters, sometimes only centimeters. Sulu's piloting was masterful, but Kirk knew they couldn't keep this up forever. The Yamato, unable to match the Enterprise's maneuverability, took a different approach. Okita ordered the ship to rotate continuously on its vertical axis, presenting different shield facings to the enemy fire while the shock cannons fired from all available angles. It was a classic naval tactic adapted to three-dimensional space combat. Turn the battleship into a rotating fortress, trading mobility for defensive resilience. Captain, eye shields at 85%, Sonata reported. The energy barrier is holding, but each time those weapons fire near us, they're creating quantum disruptions that stress our defensive systems. How long can we maintain? Unknown, sir. The wave motion engine is compensating for the quantum stress, but if they concentrate fire, one of the alien vessels suddenly accelerated, moving with startling speed directly toward the Yamato. Its hull began to glow brighter, pulsing faster. Captain, that vessel is on a collision course, Mori shouted. Impact in 15 seconds. All aft cannons, fire at will, stop that ship. The Yamato's aft shock cannons unleashed a devastating barrage, every available weapon firing at the approaching vessel. The alien ship shuddered under the assault, massive chunks of its hull blown away, but it kept coming. Its regeneration couldn't keep pace with the damage, but momentum carried it forward. 10 seconds to impact. Kirk watched in horror from the Enterprise. Yamato, emergency warp. Get out of there. Wave motion engine can't generate a stable warp field under combat conditions, Sonata shouted back over the comm. We'd tear ourselves apart. 5 seconds. Okita's mind raced. Conventional options had run out. They couldn't outrun the kamikaze ship, couldn't destroy it in time, couldn't warp away. That left only one option, the option he'd hoped to avoid. Wave motion gun, Okita said quietly. Emergency charge. Target that vessel. Fire the moment we're ready. Sir, at this range. Do it, Commander, now! Deep within the Yamato's hull, ancient machinery roared to life. The wave motion core, designed to power faster-than-light travel, was diverted entirely to the massive cannon at the ship's bow. Tachyon particles cascaded through focusing chambers, building exponentially, compressed to impossible densities. The barrel of the wave motion gun began to glow, first blue, then white, then a brilliant azure that hurt to look at directly. On the Enterprise, Spock's console screamed warnings. Captain, the Yamato is charging its primary weapon. Energy output is rising exponentially. If they fire at this range, shields maximum. All hands brace for impact. The alien ship was 3 seconds from collision when the wave motion gun fired. The beam that erupted from the Yamato's bow was like nothing in the Federation's arsenal. It wasn't just energy. It was concentrated tachyon matter. Particles that existed in a state of perpetual faster-than-light motion are compressed into a coherent stream and released with the force of a collapsing star. The alien vessel was annihilated. Not destroyed, not damaged, annihilated. One moment it existed, the next it was reduced to its constituent atoms, scattered across light years of space. The wave motion beam continued past, lancing into the void for hundreds of thousands of kilometers before finally dissipating. The shock wave from the weapon's discharge buffeted both the Enterprise and the remaining alien vessels. The Yamato itself lurched backward from the recoil, its inertial dampeners struggling to compensate for the titanic forces involved. On the Enterprise's bridge, the entire crew stared in stunned silence. "My God," McCoy whispered. That's extraordinary," Spock finished, his voice carrying a note of awe that was unusual for a Vulcan. Captain, the energy output of that weapon exceeds our maximum theoretical projections by a factor of 3. It's not just a directed energy weapon, it's a matter disintegration beam operating at faster-than-light velocities. Kirk found his voice. Damage report from the Yamato? Uhura checked her console. They're reporting all systems nominal, Captain. Minor stress to the wave motion core, but already stabilizing. The 4 remaining alien vessels had stopped their attack, their bioluminescent pulses flickering erratically. They seemed to be communicating, assessing. They're reconsidering their tactics, Kirk observed. They just watched us vaporize one of their ships. They're deciding whether we're worth the cost. On the Yamato's bridge, Okita stared at the view screen, his expression grave. He'd fired the wave motion gun. In Federation space, with the Enterprise as witness, he'd unleashed the weapon that Starfleet feared. There would be consequences. But his crew was alive. The ship was intact, and the enemy had learned that the Yamato was not prey. Reload wave motion gun, Okita ordered quietly. If they attack again, I want to be ready. Sir, the wave motion core needs at least 5 minutes to recharge for another shot, Sonata reported. Then we'll have to make sure we don't need another shot for 5 minutes. The alien vessels remained motionless, their weapons still charged but not firing. The standoff stretched for long seconds. Then, one of the ships began broadcasting again, the same harmonic resonance Uhura had detected earlier. Captain, I'm getting more of that signal, Uhura reported. The universal translator is still struggling, but I'm starting to pick up patterns. I think they're trying to communicate. Put it on speakers, Kirk ordered. The bridge filled with an eerie sound. Harmonics that seemed to resonate in multiple frequencies simultaneously, creating an almost musical quality. The universal translator struggled to process it, producing fragmentary phrases. Harvest, incomplete, resistance, unexpected, evaluation, withdrawal. They're talking about us, Spock observed. Specifically about the Yamato's weapon. They did not anticipate that level of destructive capability. The alien vessels began moving, not forward into attack, but backward, withdrawing. Their bioluminescent pulses gradually dimmed as they increased distance from the two Starfleet ships. They're leaving, Sulu said, disbelief in his voice. Yes, sensors confirm, Spock added. All 4 vessels are withdrawing at high impulse. They appear to be abandoning this engagement. Kirk allowed himself to breathe. Stand down from red alert. Maintain yellow alert status. Mr. Spock, I want continuous scans. If they come back, agreed, Captain. Kirk opened a channel to the Yamato. Captain Okita, status? Okita's weathered face appeared on the screen. We're intact, Captain Kirk. No casualties. Wave motion gun is recharging, but all other systems are nominal. That was impressive and terrifying. I can see why Admiral Comac has concerns. As do I, Captain. As do I. Okita's expression was heavy. I used a planet-killer weapon to destroy a single ship. In front of witnesses, Starfleet will have questions. You saved your ship and crew. You acted in self-defense against an enemy that could bypass conventional shields. Anyone with sense will see that. Kirk paused. But yes, there will be questions. Then I'll answer them. But first, we need to deal with the Intrepid. The dead starship still hung in space, silent and dark. 400 Vulcan lives extinguished. Kirk felt the weight of it settle over him like a shroud. Mr. Spock, prepare a boarding party. Full biohazard protocols. We need to know what happened over there, and we need to recover any survivors if possible. Captain, Spock said quietly, sensors detected no life signs. The probability of survivors is... I know the probability, Mr. Spock, but we check anyway. We owe them that much. Spock nodded. Understood, Captain. And I shall lead the boarding party myself. As the Enterprise prepared to investigate the Intrepid's death, Okita turned to his own crew. Lieutenant Mori, compile a complete tactical log of this engagement. Every sensor reading, every command decision, every shot fired. Starfleet will want a full accounting. Already working on it, sir, Mori replied. Sonata approached Okita's command chair, speaking quietly. Captain, you know this changes things. Using the wave motion gun in Federation space, even in self-defense, it's going to make integration into Starfleet much more complicated. I know. Okita stared at the Intrepid's corpse on the view screen. But I'd rather face a tribunal than explain to my crew's families why I let them die when I had the power to save them. Agreed, sir. Sonata paused, then added, For what it's worth, I think you made the right call. Thank you, Commander. I hope Starfleet sees it the same way. On the Enterprise, Spock assembled his boarding party. 2 security officers, a medical technician, and himself. They materialized in the Intrepid's transporter room and immediately knew something was profoundly wrong. The ship was cold. Not just temperature cold, though it was that life support had clearly failed. But there was a deeper cold, an absence that went beyond mere physics. The ship felt empty, devoid not just of life, but of the essence that made a vessel a living, breathing entity. Tricorder readings, Mr. Spock? One of the security officers asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Spock studied his instrument. Atmospheric contamination is present, but not at levels sufficient to require environmental suits. However, I am detecting residual quantum fluctuations throughout the ship, the same type of disruption the alien weapons create. Then this ship was dissolved from the inside? In a manner of speaking, the quantum disruption appears to have targeted organic matter specifically. The ship's structure is intact, but anything biological has been reduced to basic molecular components. Spock's voice was carefully neutral, but his grief was visible to those who knew him well. 400 Vulcans disassembled at the atomic level. Death would have been instantaneous. They moved through the silent corridors, encountering no bodies, because there were no bodies to encounter. Uniforms lay crumpled where crew members had stood, empty and lifeless. Personal effects remained untouched, but the people themselves were simply gone. On the bridge, they found the captain's log still recording. Spock activated the playback. A Vulcan captain appeared on the viewer, Commander Sonak, according to the dedication plaque. His voice was calm, logical, even as he described the horror unfolding around him. Captain's log, supplemental. We responded to what appeared to be a derelict vessel of unknown origin. Upon closer investigation, the vessel proved to be a lure. 5 additional ships decloaked and opened fire with weapons that penetrated our shields as if they did not exist. Crew casualties are mounting exponentially. Recommend any Starfleet vessels receiving this log maintain maximum distance from unknown organic hulled vessels. They appear to harvest biological matter for unknown purposes. This will be my final entry. The Intrepid dies, but let her death serve as warning to... The log ended abruptly. Spock stood in silence for a long moment, then closed the log file. We have learned what we came to learn. There is nothing more we can do here. Back on the Enterprise, Kirk listened to Spock's report with a heavy heart. They were lured in, just like we almost were. If we hadn't had the Yamato with us? Indeed, Captain. The wave motion gun's destructive capability was sufficient to convince the alien vessels that we were not suitable prey. Without it, we may have suffered the Intrepid's fate. Kirk turned to the view screen, where the Yamato hung in space. Ancient, powerful, terrifying, and in this moment, necessary. Note in the log, Mr. Spock, the Yamato's intervention prevented the loss of the Enterprise and her crew. The wave motion gun was deployed in defense of Federation assets against hostile forces that had already destroyed one Starfleet vessel. The use of force was appropriate and necessary. So noted, Captain. Uhura, send a priority message to Starfleet Command. Full tactical logs, sensor readings, and Captain Sonak's final log entry. Inform them that we're continuing to Starbase 11 with the Yamato, and that we've encountered a new hostile species with dangerous capabilities. Aye, sir. Message transmitted. Kirk opened a channel to the Yamato. Captain Okita, secure from battle stations, will proceed to Starbase 11 as planned. And, Captain, thank you. Without your ship and crew, we'd be as dead as the Intrepid. Okita nodded solemnly. Protecting allies is what we do, Captain Kirk. It's what we've always done. It's what we'll continue to do. As the 2 ships set course for Starbase 11, leaving the Intrepid's tomb behind, neither captain knew that their battle had been observed. Far beyond the range of Federation sensors, in a region of space where reality bent and twisted in impossible ways, others had watched the engagement with great interest. The Tholians had seen the wave motion gunfire, and they wanted it. The next challenge was already approaching, and it would test the alliance between the Enterprise and Yamato in ways that went far beyond simple combat. Starbase 11 hung in the void like a massive wheel of light and steel, its docking pylons extending like spokes from a central hub. The station was one of Starfleet's premier facilities, home to advanced tactical research, a major starship repair complex, and the headquarters for Sector Command. As the Enterprise and Yamato approached at impulse speed, both crews felt the weight of what awaited them. Starbase 11 Control, this is the Enterprise requesting docking clearance, Uhura transmitted. Enterprise, you are cleared for docking at Port 7. Yamato, maintain position at 10,000 kilometers pending clearance from Station Commander. Kirk frowned. Pending clearance? What's that about? Before Uhura could respond, a new voice came over the comm, older, authoritative, instantly recognizable. "Jim, this is Chris Pike. I've been expecting you. Bring the Enterprise in, but keep the Yamato at distance for now. We need to talk before that ship comes anywhere near my station." Kirk felt his stomach tighten. Admiral Christopher Pike had been his mentor, and the man who'd commanded the Enterprise before him. If Pike had concerns about the Yamato, they were concerns Kirk couldn't easily dismiss. "Understood, Admiral. We'll proceed as ordered. Kirk out." He turned to Spock. "You have the con, Mr. Spock. I'll be in the briefing room waiting for Admiral Pike." 20 minutes later, Kirk sat across from Christopher Pike in the Enterprise's briefing room. The Admiral had aged since their last meeting. The lines on his face deeper, the gray in his hair more pronounced. But his eyes were as sharp as ever, and the intelligence behind them unmistakable. "Jim," Pike began without preamble, "tell me you have a damn good explanation for bringing a warship armed with planet-killing weapons into my sector." "I do, sir. The Yamato saved the Enterprise. Without their intervention, we'd have suffered the same fate as the Intrepid." Pike's expression softened slightly. "I read your report on the Intrepid. 400 Vulcan souls, it's a hell of a loss." He paused. "But that doesn't change the strategic nightmare you've handed me. Do you have any idea what's waiting for you out there?" "Sir?" Pike activated a holographic display showing the space around Starbase 11. Dozens of contacts appeared. Starfleet vessels, civilian ships, and several that made Kirk's blood run cold. "3 Tholian cruisers," Pike said, pointing to a cluster of angular crystalline vessels. 2 Romulan warbirds maintaining position just outside Federation space. And intelligence reports suggest at least 1 Klingon battle group is en route, probably the same one you tangled with earlier. Everyone wants a piece of your new friends, Jim. Or at least, they want to make sure nobody else gets a piece. The Yamato isn't a prize to be claimed. I know that. You know that. But out there?" Pike gestured toward the view screen. "They see a technological revolution. A ship that can bypass conventional shields, destroy planets, and apparently survive engagements that would vaporize most vessels. In the wrong hands, that technology could tip the balance of power in this entire quadrant." Kirk leaned forward. "Then it's fortunate it's in the right hands. Admiral, I fought alongside Captain Okita. I've seen how he commands, how his crew operates. They're not conquerors or warmongers. They're explorers who did what was necessary to survive." "I believe you, Jim, but belief doesn't change politics." Pike pulled up another display, this one showing the Federation Council chambers. "There's a vote scheduled in 3 days, whether to grant the Yamato asylum, integrate them into Starfleet, or other options." "What other options?" Pike's jaw tightened. "Impound the vessel, disarm it. In extreme scenarios, destroy it. There are counselors who genuinely believe the wave motion gun is too dangerous to exist, regardless of who controls it. That's insane. That's politics. And right now, Jim, you and Captain Okita are caught in the middle of it." Pike stood, pacing to the view screen. "Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to conduct a full evaluation of the Yamato. Technical, tactical, psychological. Every system, every weapon, every crew member. I need to provide the Federation Council with a complete assessment. How long will that take? 4 weeks minimum. During that time, the Yamato will be confined to this sector under close observation. No unauthorized departures, no weapons tests, no incidents. And the Tholians? The Tholians are claiming the Yamato violated their territorial space during its temporal displacement. They're demanding the ship be turned over to them for examination." Kirk shot to his feet. "That's ridiculous. The Yamato didn't even know where they were when they appeared in this era." "I agree. But the Tholians don't care about logic, Jim. They care about acquiring advanced technology, and they're not above using legal technicalities to justify aggressive action." Pike turned back to Kirk. "Which is why I need you to keep Captain Okita and his crew from doing anything that could give the Tholians, or anyone else, an excuse to escalate this situation." "I'll do my best, sir. But Captain Okita doesn't take kindly to threats. Neither did you when you were in his position." Pike smiled slightly. "That's what worries me." On the Yamato, Captain Okita stood on his bridge, watching the massive bulk of Starbase 11 through the view screen. Around the station, he could see the other vessels. Tholian, Romulan, Klingon, predators circling, waiting for weakness. Captain, we're receiving a transmission from Starbase 11, Mori reported. Admiral Pike requests permission to come aboard for a formal inspection. Granted. Have Commander Sanada meet him in the hangar deck. Okita turned to his tactical officer. Sanada, before the Admiral arrives, I want all classified systems locked down. Wave motion gun technical specifications, engine schematics, weapons targeting protocols, everything goes into secure storage with encryption. Sir, if we're trying to earn Starfleet's trust is earned gradually, Commander, not given freely to those who've known us for less than a week. Okita's expression was firm. I won't hand over the keys to our most powerful weapons until I'm certain they won't be misused. Make it happen. Aye, sir. Admiral Pike materialized in the Yamato's hangar deck and immediately understood why this ship unnerved so many people. The interior was a jarring blend of old and new, bulkheads that looked like they belonged on a 20th century warship, interspersed with holographic displays and energy conduits that pulsed with exotic radiation. It was a ship built in desperation, and that desperation showed in every riveted plate and improvised system. Commander Sanada met him with a formal salute. Admiral Pike, welcome aboard the Yamato. Commander, Pike returned the salute. I'd like to begin the inspection immediately, starting with engineering, then proceeding to tactical systems, and finally the bridge. Of course, sir, if you'll follow me. As they walked through the Yamato's corridors, Pike observed everything. The crew moving with military precision, the mixture of analog and digital controls, the weapon systems integrated into nearly every deck. This wasn't a ship designed for exploration. It was a ship designed for war. In engineering, Pike found himself standing before the wave motion core, a massive cylindrical chamber that pulsed with blue-white light, tachyon particles visible as they cascaded through the containment field. Incredible, Pike murmured. Yes, you're actually harnessing faster-than-light particles for power generation. The chief engineer, a middle-aged man named Tokugawa, nodded with evident pride. The wave motion core is the heart of the ship, Admiral. It powers everything. Engines, weapons, shields, life support. Without it, the Yamato is just a drifting hulk. And the wave motion gun draws directly from this core? Yes, sir. When we fire the main weapon, we divert the entire output of the core into the focusing array. For approximately 3 seconds, the Yamato generates more power than most small stars. Pike felt a chill run down his spine. And you can control this? Safely? We've fired it 14 times without catastrophic failure, Tokugawa replied. Though I won't lie, Admiral, every time we charge that gun, there's a non-zero chance of cascade failure. If the containment field collapses during discharge, the resulting explosion would vaporize the ship and everything within 10,000 kilometers. Yet you fire it anyway. When the alternative is death at enemy hands, yes, sir, we fire it anyway. The inspection continued through tactical systems, crew quarters, medical facilities. Everywhere Pike looked, he saw the same pattern. Incredible innovation born from desperate necessity, systems pushed beyond safe operational parameters, and a crew that had learned to live on the knife's edge between survival and annihilation. Finally, they reached the bridge. Captain Okita stood from his command chair, offering a formal salute. Admiral Pike, I trust Commander Sanada has been cooperative. Very cooperative, Captain, though I notice several systems remain locked down. Not technical specifications I'd like to review. All classified systems are secured, Admiral. I'm happy to discuss their capabilities, but detailed schematics will remain restricted until I'm certain of their security. Pike's eyes narrowed. Captain, the Federation Council needs complete information to make an informed decision about your vessel's status. Withholding technical data doesn't help your case. With respect, Admiral, I've commanded this ship for over 3 years. I've fought battles you can't imagine, against enemies whose technology made the Klingons look primitive. I know the value of operational security. Okita gestured toward the view screen, where the Tholian cruisers were visible. And I know that the moment I hand over complete technical specifications, every power in this quadrant will be trying to steal or duplicate them. The wave motion gun isn't just a weapon, Admiral. It's a potential apocalypse. I won't be responsible for starting an arms race. Pike studied Okita for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I can respect that, but you need to understand. The Federation Council is going to demand access to that information. If you refuse, they may decide you're too much of a security risk to allow to remain free. Then I'll face that decision when it comes, but I won't compromise my ship's security for political convenience. The two captains, one retired, one displaced in time, stood in tense silence. Finally, Pike spoke again, his tone softer. Off the record, Captain? I think you're making the right call. There are people in Starfleet who'd love to get their hands on planet-killing weapons, despite all our high-minded rhetoric about peace and exploration. But on the record, I have to recommend that you reconsider. The political situation is more fragile than you realize. I appreciate the honesty, Admiral, and I'll take your recommendation under advisement. Pike was about to respond when Lieutenant Maury interrupted. Captain, Admiral, we're being hailed by the Tholian vessels. They're demanding to speak with you immediately. Okita and Pike exchanged glances. Put them through, Okita ordered. The view screen flickered, revealing a Tholian commander, a crystalline being whose body seemed to shift and refract light in impossible ways. The image was heavily filtered to protect human eyes from the searing heat that Tholians preferred. But even filtered, the being's presence was alien and unsettling. This is Commander Loskin of the Tholian Assembly. The being's voice crackled through the universal translator, each word precisely enunciated. We have monitored your vessel's arrival in this sector. Our analysis confirms that your ship briefly transited Tholian territorial space during its temporal displacement event 7 days ago. That's impossible, Sonata objected. We were in stasis. We had no control over our trajectory. Irrelevant. Tholian law is clear. Any vessel that violates our space, regardless of circumstance, is subject to seizure and examination. We demand you surrender your ship immediately. Pike stepped forward. Commander Loskin, this is Admiral Christopher Pike, Starfleet. The Yamato is under Federation protection. Your claim to their vessel is not a claim, Admiral, a legal imperative. We have monitored the destructive capability of this vessel's primary weapon. Such power in the hands of undisciplined organic life forms represents an unacceptable threat to Tholian security. We will take possession of this vessel, by negotiation if possible, by force if necessary. That sounds like a threat, Commander, Okita said quietly. It is a statement of fact. You have 1 hour to comply with Tholian law. If you refuse, we will construct an energy web around your vessel and tow it into Tholian space. Any resistance will be met with appropriate force. The transmission ended abruptly. Pike turned to Okita. Captain, you need to stand down. Let Starfleet handle this through diplomatic channels. If I engage the Tholians, I'll destroy their ships and prove to the entire quadrant that the Yamato cannot be intimidated. Okita's voice was steel. Admiral, I've faced down entire fleets. I'm not about to surrender my ship to crystalline bureaucrats because they claim we violated their space while unconscious. Captain, please. Admiral Pike, Okita interrupted, his tone respectful but unyielding. I appreciate your position, but I have 114 crew members depending on me to protect them in this ship. I will not surrender. Not to the Tholians, not to the Klingons, not to anyone. Pike saw the determination in Okita's eyes and recognized it. He'd seen that same look in James Kirk's eyes more times than he could count. The look of a commander who'd made up his mind and wouldn't be swayed. Then God help us all, Pike muttered, because if the Tholians attack, we're looking at an interstellar incident that could escalate into full-scale war. On the bridge of the lead Tholian cruiser, Commander Loskin observed the Yamato with multifaceted eyes. The organic beings had refused the Assembly's reasonable demand. This was anticipated. Organics were predictable in their irrationality. Begin constructing the energy web, Loskin commanded. Standard Tholian encirclement pattern. Once the web is complete, we will transport the organic crew to holding cells and tow the vessel to assembly space for disassembly and analysis. Commander, one of the Tholian tactical officers interjected, the vessel's weapons capabilities are substantial. If they resist, they will not resist long. Organic nervous systems cannot tolerate the heat our weapons generate. They will surrender or perish. Either outcome is acceptable. The three Tholian vessels began moving into position, forming a perfect triangle around the Yamato. From each ship's hull, energy projectors activated, beginning to weave the characteristic Tholian web, intersecting beams of coherent energy that would gradually surround the target vessel and then contract, trapping it in an unbreakable cage. On the Enterprise, Kirk watched the Tholian maneuver with growing alarm. They're actually doing it. They're attacking a ship under Federation protection in Federation space. The Tholians have never particularly cared about Federation jurisdiction, Spock observed. They view their laws as absolute, regardless of location. Kirk made a decision. Battle stations. Move the Enterprise between the Yamato and the nearest Tholian vessel. If they want to complete that web, they'll have to go through us. Jim, Admiral Pike's orders were... I know what Pike's orders were, Bones, but I'm not going to sit here and watch them take the Yamato. Kirk opened a channel to the Yamato. Captain Okita, Enterprise is moving to intercept. We'll buy you time to power up your weapons. Captain Kirk, you don't have to do this. Yes, I do. Enterprise out. Kirk turned to Sulu. Full impulse, Mr. Sulu. Put us right in the Tholian's path. The Enterprise surged forward, her sleek hull slicing through space to position herself between the Yamato and the Tholian formation. On Starbase 11, Admiral Pike watched the maneuver and cursed under his breath. Get me a channel to the Enterprise, now! Channel open, sir. Kirk, stand down immediately. That's a direct order. Kirk's face appeared on the view screen, his expression calm but unyielding. Sorry, Admiral. Can't hear you. Must be some interference from the Tholian energy web. Kirk out. The channel went dead. Pike stared at the blank screen, then allowed himself a small, rueful smile. Damn it, Jim. You never could follow orders worth a damn. On the Yamato's bridge, Okita watched the Enterprise position herself as a shield and felt a profound sense of kinship with its captain. That fool, he's risking his ship, his career, maybe even an interstellar war for us. Captain, what are your orders? Sonata asked. Okita's expression hardened. The Enterprise has given us time. Let's not waste it. Bring the wave motion gun to full charge. If the Tholians complete that web, we break it. And if they attack the Enterprise, we make them regret it. Aye, sir. The wave motion core began to thrum, on power building exponentially. On sensors, the Tholians detected the energy spike and adjusted their tactics, accelerating the web construction. The hour Loskin had given was about to expire, and when it did, the fragile piece of Federation space would shatter like crystal under a hammer. The battle that would determine the Yamato's fate, and possibly the fate of the entire sector, was about to begin. The Tholian energy web shimmered like spun glass in the void, its geometric perfection both beautiful and terrifying. Each strand pulsed with coherent energy, the pattern growing more complex with every passing second. The three Tholian cruisers maintained perfect spacing, their crystalline hulls refracting starlight as they wove their trap. On the Enterprise, Spock's instruments tracked the web's progression with clinical precision. Captain, the Tholian energy matrix will be complete in approximately 4 minutes, 30 seconds. Once closed, the web will contract at a rate of 10 meters per second. At current positioning, both the Yamato and the Enterprise will be caught within its confines. Then we'd better make sure it doesn't complete, Kirk replied. Mr. Chekhov, arm photon torpedoes. Target the energy junction points where the web strands intersect. If we can disrupt the pattern... Captain, I must advise against that course of action, Spock interrupted. Firing upon the Tholian web would be considered an act of aggression. It could escalate this situation beyond diplomatic resolution. We're already beyond diplomatic resolution, Spock. The moment the Tholians decided to attack a ship under Federation protection, they crossed that line. On Starbase 11, where Admiral Pike was coordinating with Starfleet Command, trying to prevent exactly the escalation Kirk was about to trigger. We need a diplomatic solution here, Admiral. If we open fire on the Tholians, we're looking at the collapse of the Tholian Treaty and possible incursions along our entire border. The face of Admiral Comac appeared on the view screen, his expression grim. I'm aware of the stakes, Chris. But the Tholians are the ones violating interstellar law. They have no claim to the Yamato, and they're conducting a military operation in Federation space. Tell that to the 3 Tholian battle groups assembling at the border. Our intelligence reports they're preparing for a full-scale territorial expansion if we don't hand over the Yamato. We're not handing over anything, Comac said firmly. But we need time to mobilize a proper response. Can you keep Kirk from doing something reckless for the next 6 hours? Pike laughed bitterly. Have you met James Kirk? 6 hours? I'll be lucky if I can keep him from shooting for the next 6 minutes. As if on cue, the Enterprise's phaser banks fired. Orange beams of coherent energy lanced across space, striking the intersection points of the Tholian web with surgical precision. The energy matrix flickered, its geometric perfection disrupted as several strands collapsed. For a moment, it seemed Kirk's gambit had worked. Then, the Tholians compensated. The 3 cruisers adjusted their projectors, reconfiguring the web pattern to bypass the damaged sections. Within seconds, the gaps were filled, the trap reforming stronger than before. Captain, the web is adapting to our attacks, Spock reported. The Tholians are compensating faster than we can disrupt. At this rate, the web will be complete in 3 minutes. Kirk's jaw tightened. Scotty, can we break through the web with full impulse power? Over the intercom, Montgomery Scott's voice crackled with doubt. Maybe, Captain, but the energy discharge from touching those strands would overload our shields in seconds. We'd burn up before we made it through. On the Yamato, Captain Okita watched the Enterprise's failed attempt, with calculating eyes. The Tholians learned from our wave motion gun demonstration. They're not giving us clear firing solutions on their ships. Everything is positioned behind the web strands. We could fire through the web, Sonata suggested. And the wave motion beam would vaporize the energy matrix and the ships behind it simultaneously. And catch the Enterprise in the backwash, Okita replied. No, we need another approach. He turned to his helmsman. Mr. Nanbu, can we maneuver to a position that gives us a clear shot without endangering the Enterprise? Nanbu studied his navigation displays, running calculations. Negative, sir. The web is designed specifically to prevent line-of-sight targeting. Any angle that gives us a clear shot at the Tholian vessels would put the Enterprise directly in our firing arc. Okita made his decision. Then we change the equation. Helm, full reverse thrust. Get us out of the web's radius before it closes. Sir, the Enterprise is still inside the perimeter. If we leave, Captain Kirk knew the risks when he moved to protect us. Now we protect him. Okita opened a channel. Enterprise, this is Yamato. We're executing an evasion maneuver. Once we're clear of the web, we'll have room to maneuver against the Tholian vessels. Hold position and buy us 30 seconds. Kirk understood immediately. Understood, Yamato. We'll keep them busy. Kirk out. He turned to his crew. All available power to shields. We're about to become the Tholians' primary target. The Yamato's ancient but powerful engines flared, driving the massive battleship backward at full impulse. The Tholian web, designed to contract around stationary targets, struggled to compensate for the Yamato's retreat. The energy strands stretched, their geometric perfection distorting as the target moved. Commander Loskin observed this development with crystalline precision. Unacceptable. Nav, the primary target is escaping the containment field. All vessels, redirect energy projectors to strengthen the web's forward perimeter. We will force them to remain within the matrix. The 3 Tholian cruisers adjusted their formation, concentrating their web-generating beams to create an impenetrable barrier ahead of the Yamato. The energy wall blazed bright, blocking the battleship's path like a fence of light. But Okita had anticipated this. All forward shock cannons, concentrated fire on the energy barrier directly ahead, he commanded. Maximum power. Burn us a hole. The Yamato's shock cannons roared to life, blue-white pulses of concentrated energy hammering the Tholian web. Unlike the Enterprise's phasers, which had tried to disrupt the web's structure, the shock cannons simply attacked it with overwhelming brute force. Where energy met energy in a cascade of exotic physics, the web strands superheating under the assault. And then, miraculously, a gap appeared. "Break in the web, dead ahead!" Sonata shouted. "It's only 20 meters wide, but we can fit." All power to forward shields, Okita ordered. Take us through, Mr. Nanbu. Emergency speed. The Yamato surged forward, her bulk aimed at the narrow gap like a battering ram. The edges of the break in the web scraped against the ship's shields, energy discharging in brilliant cascades. Alarms wailed as shield strength dropped precipitously. 90%, 70, 50. And then they were through. The Yamato erupted from the Tholian web like a whale breaching the surface of an ocean, her shields battered but intact, her weapons still operational. And now, free from the geometric constraints of the web, she had clear firing solutions on all three Tholian cruisers. Wave motion gun status? Okita demanded. 95% charged and climbing, Sonata reported. We can fire in 15 seconds. Target the lead Tholian vessel. Prepare to fire on my command. On the lead Tholian cruiser, Commander Loskin realized the tactical situation had reversed catastrophically. The organic ship had escaped the web, and its primary weapon, the planet-destroying beam that had vaporized the unknown vessel days earlier, was charging to fire. All vessels, emergency dispersal pattern, Loskin commanded. Do not maintain formation. The energy weapon requires stationary targets. But the Tholians had maintained their precise geometric formation too long. Breaking it required coordination, time, and precise maneuvering. They had none of those things. Yo, wave motion gun fully charged, Sonata announced. Targeting solution locked on lead vessel. Okita stared at the Tholian ship on his view screen. One word from him, and that crystalline vessel would cease to exist. Its crew, alien and incomprehensible as they were, reduced to their constituent atoms. The power of life and death, concentrated in a single command. He thought of the 14 times he'd fired this weapon before. Each one necessary. Each one justified. Each one still haunting his dreams. This would be the 15th. Captain, Sonata said quietly, we have firing solution, awaiting your order. Time seemed to stretch. On the Enterprise, Kirk watched the Yamato's main gun glow with barely contained energy, knowing what was about to happen. On Starbase 11, Admiral Pike held his breath, aware that the next few seconds would determine whether this became a diplomatic incident or an interstellar war. And on the Yamato, Captain Juzo Okita made his choice. Cease fire, he said quietly. Sonata's head snapped around. Sir? Stand down the wave motion gun. Divert power back to the wave motion core. Okita's expression was carved from stone. We've made our point. They know we could destroy them. That's enough. Captain, the Tholians attacked us, and we've proven we can defend ourselves. Destroying their ships now would make us the aggressors. It would give every power in this quadrant justification to demand our disarmament or destruction. Okita turned to face his tactical officer. We came to this era looking for a new home, Commander. We won't find it by starting a war. Sonata held his captain's gaze for a long moment, then nodded. Aye, sir. Standing down wave motion gun. Power levels decreasing. On the Tholian vessel, Commander Loskin watched the energy readings from the Yamato's primary weapon begin to decline. The organic beings had chosen not to fire. This was unexpected. Illogical. They had absolute tactical advantage. Unless Loskin's crystalline mind processed the possibilities with geometric precision. The organic beings had demonstrated their capability but chosen restraint. They were signaling that destruction was not their primary objective. This was diplomacy. Crude, emotional, inefficient, but diplomacy nonetheless. Cease web construction, Loskin commanded. Maintain current position, but do not advance. On the Enterprise, Kirk let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. They're standing down. Or both sides are standing down. Fascinating, Spock observed. Captain Okita demonstrated superior firepower but chose not to employ it. A most logical approach to de-escalation. McCoy smiled. Or he just proved he's not the threat everyone's afraid he is. Hard to call someone a warmonger when they choose not to vaporize the people attacking them. Kirk opened a channel to Starbase 11. Admiral Pike, the Tholians have ceased their attack. Recommend we use this opportunity for diplomatic contact. Pike's face appeared on the view screen, relief evident in his features. Agreed. I'm opening a channel to Commander Loskin now. And Jim? Tell Captain Okita that was either the bravest or the craziest decision I've ever witnessed. Possibly both. Will do, sir. The next 3 hours were filled with intense diplomatic negotiations. Admiral Pike, with the authority of Starfleet Command behind him, negotiated a compromise with Commander Loskin. The Tholians would withdraw their claim to the Yamato in exchange for detailed sensor logs of the ship's temporal displacement event. Data that would help the Tholians refine their own understanding of dimensional physics without requiring access to the Yamato's actual technology. Captain Okita agreed to the exchange, recognizing it as a fair trade. The Tholians gained valuable scientific data. The Yamato gained freedom from Tholian harassment. And the Federation avoided a war that could have consumed the entire sector. As the Tholian vessels withdrew, their crystalline hulls glinting in the starlight, Kirk found himself once again in the Enterprise's briefing room with Admiral Pike and Captain Okita. You took a hell of a risk. Ye Captain, Pike said, studying Okita with newfound respect. If the Tholians had called your bluff, it wasn't a bluff, Admiral, Okita replied. I could have destroyed those ships. I chose not to. There's a difference. Yes, there is. And that difference is exactly what the Federation Council needs to see. Pike pulled up a data pad. I'm recommending full integration of the Yamato into Starfleet, effective immediately. Captain Okita, you'll retain command of your vessel with the rank of captain. Your senior staff will receive equivalent Starfleet ranks, and the Yamato will be assigned to deep space exploration missions in regions where conventional vessels cannot safely operate. The wave motion gun? Okita asked. Remains under your discretion as commanding officer, subject to standard Starfleet protocols regarding weapons of mass destruction. You'll be required to log any discharge and report to Starfleet Command, but the decision to fire will be yours alone in emergency situations. Okita glanced at Kirk, who nodded encouragingly. It's a good deal, Captain. Better than I expected, honestly. There is one condition, Pike added. Your crew must undergo training in Federation protocols, Starfleet regulations, and modern tactical procedures. 4 weeks minimum. During that time, you'll be based here at Starbase 11. Acceptable, Okita said. My crew could use the rest, and we have a lot to learn about this era. Pike extended his hand. Welcome to Starfleet, Captain Okita. I have a feeling you're going to make quite an impression. As they shook hands, Kirk felt a profound sense of satisfaction. The Yamato had found a home. A crew displaced in time had found purpose. And the Federation had gained an ally whose courage and wisdom would serve them well in the challenges to come. 2 weeks later, Kirk stood on the observation deck of Starbase 11, watching the Yamato prepare for its first official Starfleet mission. The ancient battleship had been resupplied, its systems upgraded with modern Federation technology while maintaining its unique character. The crew now wore Starfleet uniforms, though Captain Okita had insisted on retaining some elements of the old Cosmo Navy design as a tribute to their origins. Captain Okita joined Kirk at the viewport, both men watching the stars in comfortable silence. Nervous about your first mission? Kirk asked. We're being sent to explore the Nekrit Expanse, Okita replied. Saw a region so dangerous that Starfleet lost 3 ships attempting to map it. Yes, Captain Kirk, I'm nervous. But I'm also eager. For the first time in years, we're not fighting for survival. We're exploring, discovering, making a difference. That's what Starfleet is all about. Kirk paused, then added, You know, there's a tradition in Starfleet. When ships part ways after serving together, the captains exchange gifts. Tokens of respect and friendship. I'm aware of the tradition. Okita reached into his jacket and pulled out a small object, a piece of metal, worn smooth by time and handling. This is a fragment from the original Yamato, the battleship that sank in 1945. We recovered it when we rebuilt the ship for space travel. It's carried us across 148,000 light-years and 200 years in time. I want you to have it. Kirk accepted the fragment reverently. Captain, I can't. This is part of your history, which is why I want you to have it. You gave us a future, Captain Kirk. This is a reminder of where we came from and what we've survived. Keep it. Remember us. Kirk's throat tightened. I will. Thank you. He reached into his own pocket and pulled out a Starfleet insignia pin. Not a standard issue one, but a commemorative pin from the Enterprise's 5-year mission. This is from my ship. Wear it with pride, Captain. You've earned it. Okita pinned the insignia to his uniform, right above his heart. It will be an honor. The two captains stood together, watching the Yamato through the viewport. The ancient warship that had saved a world crossed impossible distances. Diane now stood ready to sail into the unknown once more, not as a weapon of war, but as a vessel of discovery. On the Yamato's bridge, the crew prepared for departure. Lieutenant Mori ran final systems checks. Commander Sanada verified navigational data. Ensign Nanbu laid in the course for the Necrit Expanse, and in the engine room, Chief Engineer Tokugawa watched the wave motion core pulse with steady, reassuring energy. All stations report ready, Captain, Sanada announced as Okita returned to his command chair. Very well. Okita settled into the worn leather seat that had carried him through so much. Lieutenant Mori, open a channel to Starbase 11. Channel open, sir. Starbase 11, this is Captain Okita of the USS Yamato. We are ready to depart. Thank you for your hospitality, and for giving us a new home among the stars. Admiral Pike's voice crackled over the comm. Godspeed, Yamato. May your journey be filled with wonders and your crew return safely. Fair winds and following seas. Okita smiled at the ancient naval blessing. Thank you, Admiral. Yamato out. He turned to his helmsman. Mr. Nanbu, take us out. 1/4 impulse until we clear the starbase perimeter. Aye, sir. 1/4 impulse. The Yamato's engines thrummed to life, and the ancient battleship began its slow departure from Starbase 11. As it passed the Enterprise, still docked for routine maintenance, the two ships exchanged salutes via signal lamp, a tradition as old as naval history itself. Kirk stood at the viewport, watching the Yamato grow smaller as it headed toward its new mission. McCoy joined him, 2 cups of coffee in hand. Think they'll be all right out there? McCoy asked, handing Kirk a cup. They crossed 148,000 light-years to save their world, Bones. They fought an empire and won. They survived being thrown 200 years into the future. I think they can handle the Necrit Expanse. You didn't answer my question, Kirk smiled. Yes, Bones. I think they'll be all right. More than all right. I think they're going to show the Federation what courage and determination really look like. On the Yamato's bridge, as the ship cleared Starbase 11's defense perimeter and prepared to jump to warp, Captain Okita addressed his crew one final time. We began this journey 3 years ago, fighting to save our world from extinction. We succeeded beyond our wildest dreams. Earth lives, humanity thrives, and the Federation we've joined stands as proof that our sacrifices mattered. Now, we embark on a new journey. Not to save our world, but to explore the universe. Not to fight for survival, but to seek out the wonders of creation. We carry with us the memory of everyone who fell during our mission to Iskandar, and the hope of everyone who believed we could make a difference. Let us honor both that memory and that hope by showing this era what the crew of the Yamato is truly capable of. Mr. Nanbu, engage warp drive. Let's see what's out there. Aye, sir. Engaging warp drive. The wave motion engine sang its familiar song, tachyon particles cascading into faster-than-light propulsion. Space bent around the Yamato's hull, and the ancient battleship leaped forward into the cosmos, leaving a trail of hope in its wake. From Starbase 11, Kirk watched until the Yamato's warp signature faded from sensors. Then he raised his coffee cup in a solitary toast. To the Yamato, he said softly. May she find in this century what she fought so hard to preserve in her own: hope, purpose, and a future worth living for. The stars shone bright against the infinite dark, full of mysteries waiting to be discovered, wonders waiting to be explored, and legends waiting to be born. The Yamato had become one such legend, a ship from Earth's darkest hour, now a beacon of light in the Federation's brightest age. And in the vast expanse of the Necrit Expanse, where few ships dared to venture, the Yamato would write new chapters in the ongoing story of humanity's reach toward the stars. Not as conquerors, not as warriors, though they could be both when necessary, but as explorers, carrying forward the timeless dream of discovering what lay beyond the next horizon. The journey was far from over. For the Yamato and her crew, it had only just begun. The story of Space Battleship. Yamato's arrival in the Star Trek universe became legend across the Federation, a tale told in Starfleet Academy classrooms, analyzed by historians, and whispered about in bars from Earth to the edge of known space. Captain Okita and his crew proved themselves worthy of their Starfleet commissions time and again, mapping regions of space that had claimed countless vessels, forging alliances with species the Federation had thought lost, and standing as proof that courage transcends time and circumstance. The wave motion gun was fired exactly 3 more times in Starfleet service, each discharge meticulously documented. Each one absolutely necessary, each one saving countless lives. Commander Sanada eventually transferred to Starfleet Advanced Tactical, where his insights into wave motion technology revolutionized defensive systems across the fleet. Lieutenant Mori became one of Starfleet's foremost experts on subspace communication, her techniques for maintaining contact across impossible distances still taught decades later. And Captain Juzo Okita served with distinction for another 15 years before finally retiring to a quiet life on Earth. The Earth he'd crossed the galaxy to save, now thriving beyond his wildest dreams. He spent his final years writing his memoirs, teaching at the academy, and watching the stars from his porch, content in the knowledge that his crew's sacrifices had mattered. The Yamato herself served the Federation for 63 years before finally being decommissioned and placed in the Starfleet Museum at Memory Alpha. Her ancient hull preserved as a monument to the indomitable spirit of exploration that had carried humanity from the seas of Earth to the edges of the galaxy. But sometimes, on quiet nights at the museum, guards reported hearing the distant hum of the wave motion core, the ghost of tachyon particles singing their faster-than-light song. The Yamato, it seemed, was not quite ready to rest. Her spirit lived on in every ship that dared to venture into the unknown, in every crew that chose courage over fear, in every captain who understood that the greatest weapon was not the one that destroyed worlds, but the wisdom to know when not to use it. The legend of the Yamato endured, a reminder that heroes can come from any time, any place, and that sometimes the most powerful force in the universe is not a planet-killing weapon, but the hope that drives us to reach for the stars. Hope shines brightest in the darkest night. More stories await.